Okay, I'm monitoring to see if we have any public show up. All right, we recording? All right. We welcome you to this meeting of the Sequoia Union High School District Board of Trustees. We are convening in open session, and we will recess to close session of this special meeting from 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock. From 3 to 4. I'm sorry. I am looking at our clock up front, which is 1 hour slow. Yes, from 3 o'clock until 4 o'clock. We will report out and then open the closed session for our regular board meeting. If there are any members of the public in the Zoom session who wish to make a comment on items pertaining to our closed session agenda of the special meeting, you can raise your Zoom hands and we will accept public comment.
0.
Okay, we see no members of the public in attendance for this, and so we will adjourn to our closed session and return at 4 o'clock.
Funny, sounds like Matt.
This meeting of the Sequoia Union High School District Board of Trustees. We had an unusual circumstance. It was a first for me today that we had 2 separate closed sessions, which I'll use as part of our excuse for running a little bit late to get in here and get started, but apologies for that nonetheless. And we are ready to proceed. So let me give a quick summary of the rules of engagement for public session. Members of the public may submit written comments for the board in advance of the meeting via email at board@seek.org. All comments are sent in advance of the meeting will be shared with the board prior to the meeting, but will not be read during the board meeting. Members of the public who wish to remotely provide comment during the meeting will use the raise hand feature of their Zoom session. Click the button labeled raise hand at the bottom of the window and lower your hand by clicking lower hand after you've had your chance to speak. On mobile device, tap raise hand at the bottom left corner of the screen and the hand icon will turn blue. Text below will say lower hand while your hand is raised, and you click lower hand when you're done. To raise your hand when participating via a landline, press *9. Speakers must raise their hand during agenda item 11.1, the public comment portion of the meeting, in order to comment on topics not included on the approved agenda. To comment on specific agenda items, use the raise hand feature immediately preceding the item on which they wish to comment. Once your hand is raised, please wait to be acknowledged by the board president, who, aided by the meeting facilitator, will call on speakers. When called upon, speakers will be unmuted. After the allotted time, you'll be placed back on mute. For those in person at the meeting, welcome. For those who wish to provide comment in person at the meeting, you have already made it in, but others wishing to attend, we need proof of vaccination or a negative result COVID test within the previous 3 days. And as an alternative, we have staff available to provide rapid antigen testing so that more members of the public can get in. But for those who come and need to take that rapid test, please be aware that it's approximately a 20-minute wait. And be sure to wear a well-fitting mask that covers the nose and mouth without gaps inside the district office building. Maintain physical distancing and 6 feet apart from non-household members while in the meeting. Okay. For speaking to issues not on the agenda in person, fill out a speaker card for item 11.1, public comment. And for specific agenda items, fill out a speaker card, indicate the agenda item, and hand that card to the superintendent or executive assistant. The board's executive assistant will keep time and advise the speaker when there are 30 seconds left, and again when time is up. We ask all speakers to keep within the time limits. Okay, we'll all get used to that, but it's pretty familiar from Zoom and pretty familiar from the old days when we only used to meet in this room. All right, with that, I think we are ready for a roll call.
Student trustee Stid,
Here.
student trustee Osuna,
Here.
trustee Thompson. Here. Trustee Stevenson.
Here.
Trustee Ginn,
Here.
Vice President Dubois,
Here.
President Sarver.
Here,
A quorum is present.
thank you. We're ready to move along with approval of the agenda. Does any member of the board or the superintendent wish to make any changes to the overall agenda? If not, we'll accept a motion for approval.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the agenda is approved. All right, report out on closed session. And we had 3 different items to report out here. By a vote of 5 board members in favor, none against, the board unanimously approved the settlement agreement for case number 2021-2022-5. And unfortunately, it is sometimes necessary to expel a student based on violations of the Education Code. By unanimous vote of the 5 board members in favor and 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the expulsion of 2 students who waived hearing. Cases number 2021-22-1 and 2021-2022-2. In both cases, the decision was to expel for this fall and spring semesters of the 2021-2022 school year and establish June 2nd, 2022 as the date that each student may apply for readmission. Okay. We move along to approval of the consent agenda. And the consent agenda is moved by a board action to approve all items taken simultaneously with one motion, which is not debatable and requires a unanimous roll call for passage. The action indicated on each item is deemed to have been considered in full and action taken as worded therein. Only members of the board and the superintendent may remove items from the consent agenda. Members of the public may provide comments at the start of the consent agenda item, which may convince a board member or the superintendent to remove an item from further discussion, for further discussion. Do we have any comment cards received at all? Okay. Are there any board members who wish to remove an item?
Yes,
Trustee Thompson.
I would ask that we remove 7.7, the authorization for the purchase of 2 buses.
Okay. Any other requests for change? Okay, with that, the motion would be to waive the reading of the consent agenda, accept the reports, adopt the resolutions, and approve other items with the one removal.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This is a roll call, please.
Student trustee Stid,
Yes.
student trustee Osuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson.
Yes.
Trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Ginn,
Yes.
Vice President Dubois,
Yes.
President Sarver.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. We will add that to the action items down below. All right, you're right. We will deal with it right away. So before we get, well, let's let's get to that as the first item of business before we get to our information items and things. So we'll go through the other comments that we normally have. I'd like to head straight for superintendent's recognitions and the other.
Good evening, everyone. I'm President Sarver and Board of Trustees. It's on. Okay, can you hear me? So tonight's recognition is bittersweet. We want to acknowledge someone who's been in Sequoia Union High School District for 3.5 years now, who has provided excellent service in terms of communication and support to the Office of Superintendent, as well as to our school sites and to our community. This individual has helped with establishing a communications plan, has also put together and helped to direct our school videos, 2 of which have received national merit. And so we are very proud of that. We also want to say that it's bittersweet because this individual who I speak of so highly is one who will be moving on as the Director of Public Relations for the San Mateo Community College District. And so without further ado, and with applause and with grace and gratitude, I'd like to recognize Ms. Ana Maria Polito for your service, your exceptional leadership and communications, outstanding hard work, and devoted service to the Sequoia Union High School District. Congratulations, and you will be missed. Thank you. Thank you. She's gonna cry. Thank you.
Well, it has been a pleasure working with you, Anna. My working relationship with you goes back quite a while before you joined the district, and we had the many opportunities to work together as peer board members. Your work in the Ravenswood School District has been invaluable to the community and invaluable as a partner to this district before you became an employee of ours as well. And your work in communications has just led us on a path forward. The transformative nature of the changes in communication style and technique and effectiveness in this district are quite a testament to your involvement and your time here. And as Dr. Williams said, you will be missed. And congratulations. It sounds like your new role will be a great step forward, a great opportunity, and we are very excited for you. Thank you for your help here. Okay. Let us move along to student trustee comments.
Thank you so much. I would like to take this opportunity to encourage the district into looking into mandating consent education for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders at all of our sites. Despite how much we might not want to think about it, sexual assault is a problem at our district, and only offering consent education for 9th graders during freshman transition and teen talk as we currently do is not enough. We have to do better to educate our students and to keep them safe. I strongly believe in this cause and I urge the district into looking into this. And finally, as always, I would like to thank all of our teachers and staff members for all the incredible work that they do every single day. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I've got two things here. I've heard from some feedback from Woodside specifically, that some schools have felt blindsided by the sudden prohibition of non-essential visitors on campus. It includes, but is not limited to 8th graders wishing to shadow at the prospective high schools. The schools feel they have been left out of that discussion. I'm not here to place any blame on anybody. I'm just here to encourage more open communication. And then just an update, Woodside had its homecoming game last week. We won kind of a landslide victory against Mills, 30-8. So that kept the homecoming spirit alive, even though our homecoming dance and rally were rescheduled. And a reminder that we will be playing Sequoia this Friday, the 29th, to reclaim the log. So go Wildcats.
Okay, those were some powerful and important suggestions that came to you, and we've got notes on that. Thank you very much for that. It had been on my calendar to try and get to the Woodside homecoming game. I had a double whammy last Friday. One was the oncoming storm, and the other was that on Thursday, to my great relief and good fortune, I was able to get my COVID booster shot, being one of those older people who gets an early spot on that list. And I'm one of those people that has a solid day of reaction from a COVID shot. So I was under the weather most of Friday. However, this Friday, I do plan to attend the Woodside Sequoia game, which will drive me to eschew Carlmont's homecoming. But there are tough decisions that we have to make all the time. But I'm going to opt for the twofer and go see Sequoia and Woodside duke it out. So I'll look forward to a great contest there.
Well, you missed one Woodside victory, but you can see the next.
Excellent. I'm not going to go there. Okay. We move on to item 10, comments from the Sequoia District Teachers Association and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. We've started with SDTA last time, so if we have an Ask Me representative, I'd like to start there this time.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, district executives, faculty, staff, students, and community. I will start with a thank you to AFSCME members for allowing me the opportunity to serve as chapter president. It's an honor and a role that I take pride in serving. A congratulations to my fellow officers as well, Chris Schweister and Aubrey Taff. We look forward to working collaboratively with the district for positive solutions, building morale, and making sure that our district is its very best. I would also like to acknowledge the many congratulatory messages that I've received and kind words of support from members of cabinet, from Vicky Dye, from Edith Salvatore, faculty and staff members throughout the district. Thank you for the warm welcome, and I look forward to working with you all. AFSCME is in the preliminary stages of developing our sunshine proposal for the board. Excuse me. We look forward to constructive negotiations with positive problem solving, teamwork, listening, hearing each other while addressing concerns and the realities of working at the district. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you and welcome. All right, I see that Ms. Salvatore is in a better place this evening.
I wouldn't say a better place, just a different place as I get to juggle the parent
This is very,
side.
very quiet. I don't,
Oh, I will try to speak up. I wouldn't say a better place, but definitely a different place as I am juggling the parent side of COVID quarantines and school exposures, etc.
Edith, can you hold on just one moment?
okay, the recommendation is lean in really close to the mic.
If I knew where it was, I would. I want to thank the board for continuing to make Zoom an option so that I can be home with my quarantining kids. And we have been pleased to welcome Dr. Williams on a few of our campuses for conversations with faculty and staff. And we're looking forward to her joining us on a couple more campuses in the coming weeks. And while we got off to a decent start on bargaining, unfortunately, the district had to cancel tomorrow's session. So we won't have an opportunity to meet again until the second week of November. So we won't have any updates from the bargaining process until then. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope the quarantine ends smoothly and on time and successfully. And successfully and early would be even better, but some things are beyond our control. Okay, we move on to public comment, and we have had the information about how to submit a speaker card here in person. And by raising your hand as a participant. Public comment is for items not agendized. I am not seeing any. Oh, I do see a hand up from one of our attendees. And it is Denise Correa.
Good evening, Superintendent Williams and members of the board. My name is Denise, and on behalf of Sequoia High School Dream Club, I would like to invite you to our 12th annual Making Dreams Come True dinner. It will be virtual again this year. I believe my fellow club member Giselle emailed you an invitation with a flyer to each of you. We would like to thank you for your past support. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, okay. All right, so our system in the room is not giving great volume to our Zoom speakers, but we did hear much of that. My computer is muted. Probably had the best hearing of it. Inviting us to attend dinner so that we can see.
We're being invited to a dinner for which we've received a email invitation previously.
To the chair, we have one speaker card. Okay.
All right, and our speaker card is from Chris. I'm gonna get this wrong, and I ask you to come help me out. But let's see, is it SUHSD or is it SCO-Forester? SUHSD. Okay.
Hello, I just wanted to introduce myself as the new Vice President of the AFSCME local classified chapter. My name is Chris Poyster. I've been part of the negotiating team for 6 years, and I've been with the district for 6 years. I've been a regular steward, as well as an executive board member at the local division. And we're just really excited to see the future and work together to accomplish everything. So thank you. Just a quick introduction.
Thank you and welcome. All right. With that, let us return to our pulled item from the consent agenda. Item 7.7, authorization for the purchase of 2 school buses.
Well, I chose to pull that item because it's the purchase of 2 gas or diesel buses. And I have, and I think most of us in the community have an interest in investing in a fleet that's based upon sustainable resources. I think we're fortunate to live in a community that largely believes in science. We live in a community that thinks of global climate change as an existential threat. And I think our public agencies, including school districts, need to lead the effort in investing in the infrastructure for those things. Now, I will support this because of this line that's included in the superintendent's recommendation. At the end, it says, but I want this underscored because I'll be concerned about things in the future. Although the need to purchase these buses is urgent, and that's the reason I'll support it, the district is continuing to explore moving to electric buses. And I hope we do more than explore, but actually move to electric buses. Staff is working on grants to help us replace our aging fleet with electric school buses. So, Mr. President, I'm happy to vote in favor of this, even make a motion to approve it, but hope my colleagues will in general agree that this is an area where we'd like to see changes in the district's practices in the future.
Well, I do see that Ms. Leach does have, is a little bit prepared to join in.
I don't have to be prepared. If you don't have
Well, I know that this is a concern that I also have raised, and there has been some conversation. And I would like maybe to share a little bit with the whole board and members of the community that are involved, you know, how we are working to move forward and what the special circumstances are here, and kind of what are some of the flexibility that we're trying to undertake to make for a good outcome.
So a transition to a fleet, I'm trying to think off the top of my head how many buses that we have, moving towards electric buses is definitely a huge overcoming, obviously cost-wise, right? So any partnership that we can gain, any trials that we can volunteer ourselves for as far as electric buses go is definitely beneficial to us. The cost is substantially larger than the purchase of gasoline buses. So it's definitely something that we need a plan, whether that be a 5, 8, or a 10-year plan for as our buses age out of our fleet, we're able to replace them with an electrical vehicle. Keeping in mind that we will still need gasoline buses for long trips and for potential just mechanical failures, but also train up our staff. Working on electric buses is different than working on gasoline buses. So it is not just the signing of a check and purchasing those buses, but staff is actively pursuing what that would look like for us, and has been. It was a conversation 2 years ago when I was hired. So we're definitely moving in that direction.
Thank you. I heard interest in a motion.
I will move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you. And thank you for bringing this for a little further conversation. This moves us along to our information item, the first of a hit parade that Ms. Hanson will be bringing to the podium this evening.
I appreciate you calling it a hit parade.
Yeah.
There are other things that could be called, so thank you for your kind words. I want to know if my boss is starting the 15-minute timer now or when I call the first speaker up. Okay, without further ado, could I please have the LCAP authors join me? There are lots of folks who contribute to the authorship of the LCAP, and some others are in the audience this evening to answer questions that you have. This is a new format that we are trying this year, in which we're going to give you quarterly updates on how we are doing on progressing to our goals. And so without further ado, for goal 1, we have Victoria Dye.
Hello. In the area of goal 1, we are off to the races this fall, and the goal is to strengthen quality instruction by improving engagement, rigor, and preparation for college, career, and adult civic responsibilities for all students. The first action in this goal has to do with curricular alignment. So I'll highlight some of the actions so far this year, but not all, because that would take too long. Our math initiative continues, and we're working with Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 teachers to align with the Common Core definition of mathematical rigor and the Common Core math practices. This year, we're focusing the initiative on internal capacity building, having thus far already launched a cohort that includes professional learning, supported application, and in-class coaching. We've also held classroom instructional rounds, model lessons, and supported attendance of the UCube conference at Stanford. These have been attended by teachers, really importantly, department chairs, and some administrators to help grow instructional leadership. We're continuing to align with the next generation science standards and in the areas of curriculum instruction and assessment, 3 areas of focus. So we've hosted workshops for 3 disciplines in the sciences: biology, chemistry, physics, in which teachers experience phenomenon-based instruction and a learning sequence and lead with standards-aligned curriculum. This is important because we don't have a current adoption in science. So we've also made cohorts for the Stanford NGSS assessment project available. Let's see, I'm going to move on to talk about instruction. We've provided PD and support for rigor and quality interactions in classroom instruction. So far this year, we've held 150 unique PD sessions in Teacher Orientation Week, after school PD release days, September 13th staff day. About 40 of these sessions have had an explicit focus on rigor and quality interactions shared with other priorities. Integrated ELD continues to be a crucial area of focus, which we'll talk a lot more in our EL update. And we lost our instructional coach in the area of integrated ELD, but we're continuing. We have some internal capacity built. So right now we have a cohort of science teachers participating in this intensive training. And we're going to have a little bit more help next semester as we hire a point 2 instructional coach to help offer the training to more teachers. So overall, our efforts continue robustly in the area of LCAP Goal 1, but there's been some significant challenges this fall to participation that I don't probably need to enumerate right now. So the other tab of this document includes metrics that my colleague Diana will talk about more, but in LCAP Goal 1, test scores, graduation rates, with a specific focus on disparities between groups is how we measure our progress, and we don't have much to report at this time in that area.
Hey, thank you very much. And I am proudly the author of our second goal, which focuses on equity. And this is where the district recognizes, equity is a behavior, and we believe in meeting the needs of individual students. And we commit to identify and design systems to allow all students to succeed by overcoming institutional and instructional practices that perpetuate the inequalities in student incomes. This goal actually aligns with state priority area 7 on course access. And we presented 4 actions related to this goal. The first action rather, is to identify and remove barriers for students to meet A through G requirements that are necessary for meeting college and career pathways. In this area, we have conducted an extensive, or in the process really of conducting an extensive self-study on our support, intensive, and intervention programs in English language arts. And I'm proud to say we now have every 9th grader enrolled in an A through G eligible math and science course. We continue to support the research around understanding the impact of this initiative and plan to share more with you as we continue to work with Stanford and on their research as well as our own research in-house. Secondly, we also have an action focusing on the diversity and equity as a primary action to support learning and working environments as well as student academic outcomes. In this case, we have offered professional development opportunities this fall during Teacher Orientation Week, our Staff Professional Development Day. We had Racial Equity Facilitators Fellowship, and we have started a contract with USC for Racial Equity Academies, as well as a climate study. We also have implemented ethnic studies as a graduation requirement for the class of 2025. We've developed readers for that class and launched a PD series for ethnic studies. In the third action, we have to systematize programs for English learners for a successful transition to SUHSD and receive services in pursuit of graduation and post-secondary opportunities. In this case, we have started and launched our EL Newcomer Welcome Center this year. We hired a coordinator for that Welcome Center. We developed and implemented an intake process for communication with our sites, and we have implemented a new ELD curriculum. Again, you'll hear more about that later this evening as we talk about our EL master plan. And lastly, the action around implementing the improvement strategies to address pupil outcomes for students with disabilities. I'll update you more in Q2 to focus on what our efforts have been around improving our disproportionality. And the metrics associated with this goal, as well as the other goal that Vicki mentioned, really do focus on calling out the graduation rates of our English learners, our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, our homeless students, our foster students, our students with disabilities, calling out the graduation rates, the A through G graduation, the A through G eligibility rates of those graduates, and setting goals and targets for the next 3 years to make and show improvements. And as Vicki called out as well, we are looking at the achievement gap specifically and working to narrow it. Thank you.
All right, the Student Services team and I have the distinct pleasure to author goal number 3, which is our goal related to offering academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning supports to all students via a multi-tiered system of supports model across the district. We have 4 action items associated with this goal. The first being MTSS, that's the acronym for multi-tiered system of supports. I won't say that repeatedly, I will say MTSS. Coordination of practice and expectations as an update as we started the school year. Our strategic plan for MTSS has been developed. We have worked on our social emotional learning district professional development, as Vicki alluded to those sessions in September, related to foundations of social emotional learning, trauma-informed practices, as well as some offerings to our parents within the community via the Parent Project as well. Our social emotional learning pilot for alternative education pathway programs being worked on. We're also collaborating very closely with middle college staff in the community college system for vertical alignment under this practice. That's new for this school year. As well as expanding the community resiliency model training team. We have added 2 general education school psychologists in the student services team, and those individuals are now certified to provide training in the community resiliency model. Under action 2, that has to do with MTSS and the efficacy of interventions and delivery. So there has been some preliminary work started on our social emotional learning and mental health audit. That is just the beginning, a lot of work to continue in that area. Partnerships being built out for our work around restorative justice, as well as equity and social emotional learning, and the social emotional learning framework, again, through our SEL task force. Process mapping has also started, again, under our social emotional learning task force. And we are also working through the start of our professional development pathway focusing on MTSS specifically for our school counselors. Action 3 is our data system and support for MTSS. We have our data platform professional development plan that's been developed. We are starting small with the rollout of that data platform, which is Panorama Student Success, in order to finalize and climb over any speed bumps that arise. Our 4th action is on integrating services and improving supports for unduplicated student groups. Some work as an update there. We are working on procuring via collaboration with the organization called My Stuff Bags in order to obtain 200 bags that include clothing, blankets, toiletries, personal hygiene items, books, school supplies, and some other items to name as examples. We will be procuring those items. We will be delivering to our school sites for our unduplicated students, which is a focus on our foster youth, homeless, and some additional students in those groups. Some of the metrics, just as a note for our update, we do have some data specifically on our chronic absenteeism rate. Our baseline in 2019 was 16.5%. We are currently at 14.3% district-wide for chronic absenteeism, as well as our suspension rate. 2020 was 3.8%, and we're currently just under 1%. Those are some updates that we have, but more data will be coming on additional quarter updates for our metrics. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Williams and Board of Trustees. I just want to name, I'm really excited to see colleagues in person this evening. It's really nice to be back here. So I'm going to update you on Goal 4, the support in promoting successful student outcomes at the district small schools and alternative programs. So Tide Academy Vision, Curriculum and Instruction. We're working with our partner, Foothill College, on updating our CTE pathways for computer science and business and marketing to reflect student needs. We're determining capstone placement and course selection for senior year. Next year, Tide's inaugural class will be seniors, and with the menu of options that they will have, which will include internships. They're all connected to mentorships this year. We had our WASC visit. This is actually an update probably on your copy. It was the best WASC visit I've ever had, 45 minutes, and we got a huge thumbs up for the substantive change for the junior class. They met with 4 juniors and our college advisor and counselor and myself, and asked the students some fabulous questions, and they were wonderful. We will have a full WASC then again in spring 2023, and also a substantive change visit for the senior class. We've been working on restorative practice, bias and discourse, professional development for our goals as a staff. Connection and community are really important, and connected with all our community partners, Live in Peace, Youth Community Service, Boys and Girls Club, Future Grads, Street Code. So really working to connect to with the partnerships in the community we serve and that we're in. Facility, I love facility work. Boiler replacement in progress, talking about some future parking needs for the school. Also, water intrusion issues have been repaired. Energy management system is 85% complete. And we realized the chemistry room was missing its fume hood. So that's on tap for summer 2022. I cannot take credit for authoring the fabulous goals for Redwood High School. Principal Stephanie Ogden has done a fabulous job with that. And for East Palo Alto Academy, Principal Amika Guillaume has done a wonderful job for that. But you can you look over the goals and they reflect a range of support from project-based learning to making sure students are progressing academically and have options have all their post-high school options open. And I know Ms. Guillaume is on the call this evening, so if you have any questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to address them. I have really enjoyed working with our small school principals as thought partners because they are helping me a lot as well. You can see Redwood's in progress for establishing CTE pathways with Kenyatta College partnership planning and UC A through G course submissions. And as for alternative education strategic plan, we're going to have a small school study session to address the goals there. So thank you for your time this evening. All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to goal 5, and the slide that you see in front of you is the metrics for this goal, and 4 of them are about student engagement, because we may think the students are engaged, but the students have to tell us if they're engaged. So we're going to be giving that survey in January, and I'll have the results of that shortly after. The other metric measure that we have for goal 5 is, do we have a highly qualified staff? Because we want people to be highly trained on how we keep students engaged in a classroom setting. So now I'm going to take you over to the actions part of goal 5. The first one is an enhanced summer program. And thanks largely to the funds that were provided for last summer and this coming summer through the Extended Learning Opportunities COVID grant, we've been able to really beef up our summer offerings. We also were able to have wellness and counselors available for students on the campus throughout the summer programs to help deal with some of the mental health needs, just because they're teenagers, and then also because they're coming back to school from a worldwide crisis. And then there were a lot more offerings for students, including we were able to do summer enrichment for ELD students, newcomers. So students are in ELD 1, 2, and 3 to enhance their learning acquisition, to make sure there wasn't a break in that, and to offer some fun outings for them and opportunities to make them feel a part of the community, especially since about half of them had never been on our campuses until they got to be there this summer. Next, we have personal devices. And my apologies, because the data in those 2 columns was flipped. We have 4,084 students who have personal devices checked out to them from the school district. And we have about 1,500 students who are using district hotspots. And then research options for possible instructional shifts. This one is not what I thought it was going to be. We will get to what I thought it was going to be, which is we've done a little bit of, hey, what worked during the pandemic and ended up being a best practice that we want to continue. But a large part of what has necessarily taken up the first quarter of this school year has been responding to some of the consequences of the pandemic and coming back to school, where we're seeing real increased mental health needs. We're seeing fatigue for students and for staff. We're seeing a large number of newcomers coming to us, many of them out of some pretty traumatic experiences. So we've been looking at, how do we do things like build our sub pool? What are best practices for that? How do we give people skills for how to deal with their own mental health, and how to have trauma-informed practices in their classrooms, et cetera. More on that when we get to the ESSER, which I'm very grateful for and excited about. And then finally, we are doing online tutoring based on the great results we got for AVID having that program for the last 2 years. And in the first 5 weeks, we had 1,438 sessions happen. More than half of them were for mathematics. And we had 576 separate essays being gone over by paper employees. I don't have the breakdown on that for you by school and by subgroups. And they're working on that. And when I have it, you will have it. And it will definitely be part of the presentation at the end of the semester. And that is it for us. We welcome your questions.
I just have one question. First of all, I really like this format. Super easy to understand.
That's Dr. Williams.
Really clear. I
like it too.
Big improvement.
Yeah.
My only question.
Sorry, before we get away from that, the other thing I like that she had us do was under metrics. You've got what your LCAP goal is at the end, but she had us put in, if you're slicing that in 3 years, what it would look like to hit benchmarks along the way that were going to get us to that final goal, which I thought was really helpful.
Thank you. So my only question, I think it's a Jarrett question. It's easy, I think. I was at a meeting last week, and they talked about the importance of aggressively identifying our homeless students, really being much more aggressive. And I just kind of wondered what we are doing, because we know that homelessness is on the rise in our area. And that could mean more kids living in cars, families, couch surfing, more shared arrangements, which can be stressful on families. So are we, sorry, I should have asked this in advance, Jarrett, but are we aggressively trying to identify homeless students throughout the year, or have any changes been made in that area?
Aggressively, in the respect of more so than ever, yes. We have put a couple of additional measures in place specifically with the work that our welfare and attendance coordinator, Alvaro Calderon, is implementing. And one thing very recently that we're working on, especially with, I know it's October, but we already are looking forward to next year's ninth graders. And so we are already starting that articulation process with our feeder schools and districts. And we are in the works of finalizing an update to our address verification process, which does make additional considerations for residency, as well as situations that our students and families are currently finding themselves in due to COVID. And under the direction and some conversations that our team has had with Dr. Williams, we are seeking those families out and providing more leniency for our residency determinations. So yes, aggressively might be the wrong descriptor, but we are absolutely doing more than we have in the past. And I'm sure Alvaro could come up here and talk to you probably for 15 minutes about that, but we're not going to do that. But know that, yes, he's working on it, and so are we as a team. Yeah.
Denise?
Thank you all for the report. I just had some questions. I think, Simone, I had some questions for you, and then and something Bonnie said just triggered a lot of thoughts for me. So the small school study session, is that with our board meeting? I believe. That's our school.
Yes, yes, I believe that will be a study session for the overall plan for the whole portfolio of alternative programs.
Yes, that is. Thank you, Simone. That is the study session for December 8th for the board. Yes, and going over and reviewing the plan with our metrics in terms of how we're going to evaluate progress, and then also to give an update on our partnerships.
Okay. Thank you. And then my next question was around chronic absenteeism, that it looks like it is increasing, because if we ended at, what is it, 16% in 2019, we're already at 14% now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So that means chronic absenteeism is already an issue, correct? So
Yeah.
what are we actually doing around that? Because I know that was a big discussion last year towards the end of the year, and it was so complex.
Yes, you're correct. It's very complex, especially now in bringing students back. I caution the use of the data only specifically due to what I will say is our enrollment still. It's very hard to say, because we know what families are up against, and we are trying to keep our students here and engaged. However, students are coming in and students are still leaving. So that number is going to fluctuate. Typically in normal, dare I say normal times, when a student becomes chronically absent or truant, they typically don't come out of that designation for the year, right? So yes, a number very close to our baseline is not a good place to be currently. However, our data that we use for our attendance monitoring system didn't begin until a month into the school year due to all of the enrollment changes. That is historical practice in most districts, where we can hopefully get a baseline enrollment snapshot. And then our school site administrators and our attendance team members begin the process of providing, identifying those students via our monitoring system, and then in communication with the families as required by our education code and law, begin communicating with the families on first notifications of truancies and then subsequent notifications that then result in attendance conferences. So it's October and we're just to the point where I know a couple sites, we have been in discussions with those conferences. And so our sites are engaging with our families. They always have been, except we are now in the last few years with the implementation of the attendance monitoring system, doing that in a formal way and tracking our interventions to be able to improve those students' attendance. So there is a plan in place. Additionally, I know Trustee Dubois, we engage a lot around Student Attendance Review Board, and we have engaged with a number of our administrators trying to look at finalizing a draft and trying to implement some of the components of a draft SARB plan. So there's a lot happening around attendance. And as we know, it's not just attendance, right? We're trying to get to the root cause issues with our students and families so that we can provide those supports and positively impact attendance so that then they're in classrooms and learning.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then the last thing is something that Bonnie talked about, the staff and students just being tired. I think you said that, Bonnie, maybe.
I sure did.
Okay, I heard it. And I know that's been on my heart as a person who works at a school and being tired myself. So I just want to put that out there. I'm joining with you all in that. And yet I know that that's not where we want to be because we have to keep the motivation up to learn and
right.
regardless of the circumstances. I do want to put back to our board. I know at the last board meeting, we were going to try to have a conversation around that about staff wellness, student wellness. And I'm not like talking about mental health, but like, how do we preserve ourselves to be our best self, to do our best thinking and use all our executive functioning. But if we're feeling in the survival or the emotional level of our brain, we're not able to be our best self. And some people can pull it through because they have a deep well, but then there are other people who need a little support. And that's actually, that's all humans. And so I love to have a conversation about that because I heard you say it, the students said it, our student trustees has said it the last meeting. And so it's just something that's been on my heart.
I thought you were going to comment about our need to find more appropriate terms to call our students.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, but I thought that, this has to do with the federal law and just like what it says, but I'm trying to.
I do think it'd be worthwhile for us to get a key of what we're going to start practicing as our language.
I really want to do that.
Yeah.
I'll work with somebody if somebody wants to work with me to do that because I think it's important. But thank you for the thorough presentation. This was really helpful. I appreciate it.
Chris.
Two observations or bits of positive feedback and then a question. The positive observation is to agree with my colleagues in saying it's a good report for us. I think it works well for us. I'm grateful that it includes the 18-19 baseline in many cases, which seems like the right baseline. I'm glad you're doing it on a quarterly basis. It will help us to do that. And the third thing is I think we'd all be looking forward to the first semester results on some of the things that are there. The second observation concerns English learners in the district, because it seems to me that's one of the most meaningful cohorts in the district that's being underserved now. And one of the numbers I'd look at is actually not on there exactly, but it's the total cohort that actually qualifies through A through G, which is a little less than the 22%. It's actually 16%. So if we're only getting 16%, you all know this, but I'm underscoring it. And the positive part of that is we're obviously aware of it because a report subsequently to us tonight is going to be about that, presumably. So that's the positive side. The question I have, which Bonnie may be more of a remind me than anything else, concerns engagement. Because it seems to me that engagement is actually one of the best measures of how students are doing and sense that they're going to be able to succeed. And yet you look at the numbers that are here and they just feel low.
They're our lowest scoring area.
And the data we use is survey data. which may not be accurate. And typically it's scaled and things like that. So remind me, should we look at that as a good measure or a representative measure of engagement? Are there other ways we might do that? Can we rely upon the numbers there?
It's one measure.
Do we think about other ways of measuring that? Do we think it's really important? I presume we do.
We do, because it's an
here.
LCAP goal.
Yeah.
And we put it as an LCAP goal because it is the areas, where we struggle most with students over the years. One thing that, and I don't know that this is going to completely answer your question, Chris, but there are two different ways to show this data, where you can show it as an overall percentile, and then you can show the raw changes within the subgroups. And I may suggest that we change to that format. I don't like these results. I don't like these results at all, but a large number of our student population takes this. So I don't think it's an insignificant data point.
And so you think it's accurate largely?
I think that it's significant.
The other part that I guess I'd ask to know ultimately is there are many reasons why students might be disengaged. And that's actually going to be more helpful to us ultimately, right?
Right.
Is it something about the curriculum? Is it stress? Is it, it could be, is it factors outside of school?
And we can add questions to the panorama survey, and it's not going out until January. We may put some in for USC. We can also add some other questions that might help us drill down on that a little bit more, because we can then match responses about, for instance, feelings about SEL, social emotional, with how they say they feel about being in classes academically.
Or issues of race.
Right.
Might be there. I hope that would be helpful to staff as well as the board,
Mhm.
understanding how we can make improvement.
Yeah, we can do that.
So I have one area of comment / question, maybe it'd be best to follow up afterwards on this, but two phrases I heard. One was measure disparities between groups, and one I heard narrow achievement gap. And when I hear that, I think, well, you could bring the top down or you could bring the bottom up. And so I just want to see up. And so I'd like to not use those, which could be met in either way, and have our words be about growth. That's sort of and then the other would be, to the extent there's data to measure, how much did Sequoia High School District improve students on whatever metrics we can measure, entry numbers, exit numbers along the way, but comparing like this year's juniors versus last year's juniors, which I've seen before, isn't super meaningful. And so I'd be interested in growth measures and in measures that are longitudinal and not if there's a way to change. I don't know if that's something to talk about separately. I know you're not going to do it like right now in the LCAP, but as a direction to head.
So I will just say that once upon a time last spring, when you guys were utterly exhausted and hearing an hour or 2 hours of Zoom comments at every meeting, you approved these measures. And I presented you with these measures. So number one here, right? If we want to change these measures, we absolutely can. But LCAP says that we have to write in explanations for why we're changing them and what we want to change them to. So I would welcome conversation about how might we improve these measures now that we're a little bit more rested, but that would be the process to go about doing so.
Okay, and I don't know what's available. So that's part of my, I wouldn't know
Sure.
what measures available to use, but I'd be interested in if other people agree, but in growth measures.
Yeah, Diana's whispering possibilities behind me, but you guys can get together and do your thing, and we'll come back with some proposals. Okay, and touche on your point that we are not trying to close the achievement gap by having our higher achieving students go down. No, but you're right, it's unclear. We'll fix it.
Although, can I just add one point about that? I do want to add the point about when we wrote in the metrics across the 3 years for closing the achievement gap by 25%. I did write it in as all ships rising. So it's just the lower performing students have to rise at a faster rate in order to make that happen. Yeah.
I just maybe a follow up to Chris's question, with how to measure engagement, which I think is really tough. And there's a lot of things in education that are really difficult to measure, right? And sometimes we really just don't have good data, and the data can be misleading. But isn't one way, I mean, a real data point would be attendance. That's real. And so often the kids that are not attending are also not engaged, right? So isn't it better just to really pay attention? It's easy, it's real. We're monitoring it every day. That's a real measure when so many of these other things, like, example of last year, we passed and graduated a lot of kids. Ellen reminds me, we were showing great compassion because of the pandemic, but we were really easy, right? And so when you look at some of these measurements, they're not telling us the whole story of how kids are really going to be doing. So anyway, the question is, isn't the focus on attendance a way to understand engagement? And it's a real number, and I just think there should be a lot more focus on that.
I would just respond with, it could be added as a metric or a measurement, but we also have to remember, I was this student. Just because I was in class, I was not engaged sometimes, actually often, I will admit it. But it can be utilized in collaboration, or I'll just stop there. Yes, it can be used.
Yeah, can I add a comment to that, which is to say we do have chronic absenteeism on there, and you and I both know the difference between that. But the chronic absentee rate is useful I agree with you that attendance is a good proxy for engagement. That said, I'm not sure it's sufficient. There's a big gulf between the chronic absentee rate and those who are disengaged. So what about the students who are there in class who don't feel like they're engaged? So I want to hit that population as well as those not attending.
And I think I'll just kind of add on it. I don't have the next exciting question to get you with. To me, one of the most positive things out of the whole presentation is the whole concept of alignment that we're seeing. Our goal setting, our planning, our implementation, our accountability are all aligning more and more and more. And part of it, to me, is, in 12 years on the board, I've watched our state actually try to recognize what the educators on the ground are telling them about aligning all of the conformance documents that were given, and how to go about actually implementing the goals that we identify. And this is another step in that direction, that we are truly kind of coming up with coherent ways of measuring our meaningful progress on the things that we're setting out to do, so that we can really be held accountable for, have we focused on the important things? Are we putting our resources where they belong? How effective are we being at doing the things we're committing to get done? And reports like this, and the whole evening is full of them, and I'll return to it. It's a hit parade. This is our way of looking at that and saying, where are we getting the hits that we need, and where do we need to redouble the efforts, move around the resources, do more thinking, get it a little bit stronger. And that kind of accountability helps us to really meaningfully move the needle. So this is a great step for us. And I appreciate the presentation.
Can I say one more thing? I forgot what I was going to say. In the plan, Bonnie, you all talked a little bit about, I think it was Tide, that they were trying to, you're doing active recruiting because it's a new school. I wanted to link that to kind of what the students had talked about of not being able to visit the school. And we know why. There's COVID stuff. We want to limit the amount of people on campus, all that kind of thing. But I do want to link these two and link back. But to Rich and I had a intense conversation at one of our goal settings last year where we were like, I want to recruit people back from the private schools and know that this is a top school, right, to go to. And mine was, we want to make sure that families know that this is not the last choice, even though it's a free choice. And so I'm linking all these different, I'm one of those people that link comments and think over and over about those. And I'm looking at Simone particularly because that's the school I went to, not just because I love MA, y'all, not just because I love MA. So I just want to say that's just the school I go to, and they did a good job. But one of the things I appreciated about them and the foundation there is that they actually advertised the school at a level of a private school. And so I'm wondering, when I'm thinking about all of our options and attendance and chronic attendance, is really about feeling like I want to go to school. Like there is a place I want to go to. And so part of that is also how we talk about ourselves, right? Verbally and non-verbally. And I know that, you know, Anna, congratulations, but we now have we're going to hopefully have a new communication person. And I just wonder what that support looks like, because I know how kids feel, how families feel also shows up in chronic attendance. It also shows up in engagement, whether I'm laying down or whether I'm sitting up and engaged. And as a person who has 3 kids with 3 different learning styles and energy for school, I know that it can look in a lot of different ways, regardless of what's happening at home. So I just wanted to link some of those, Dr. Williams, as I see like there's a level of support that's needed around making sure that people know the options. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a story, I do work with families out in community, and we had a kiddo who was not going to high school, even though I don't work with high school kids. But I found out when we started talking about Redwood and Tide and Sequoia, and where should you go so that you can be more energized to go back to school. Thankfully, they got enrolled in one of the schools and went back to their home school. But there were things that they did not know, like Redwood having CTE classes in the partnership, or what is it that Woodside offers, you know, or Sequoia, and just trying to help them make choices, because I don't tell people what to do. I just kind of share their options and the pluses and the cons and what fits for them. And it just resonated with me that people don't really understand our school district and what's there. So that's the end of what I'm going to say. So thank you
Shawnice, I totally agree with you about us needing to brag a lot more than we do, and to put ourselves out there about all the positive things that are happening, because we are just as good an option as any private school in the area. You can send your kid to the Sequoia Union High School District, where they can go to school with the rest of America and still get into one of the very top name universities that somebody next door just paid $50 grand a year to experience, and maybe not be as prepared to be away from home as a student who has gone to school on a bigger campus. But just because a private's doing it doesn't mean it's a good idea. And I think that just as many families who would like to see their kids shadow here this year, we have parents of students who are sitting in our classroom who do not want their 12-year-old being exposed unnecessarily so that someone can come and shadow. So while I 120% agree with you, we should shout it from the mountains, all the awesome things you're doing. That's when I feel like we're being really responsible in not doing this year.
Thank you so much. I do want to challenge us to be more creative though, because I think it's not a good tool for us to say that we can't do this, but not have a replacement somewhere else, because that does impact enrollment, excitement. I still remember the student walking my kids around and how important that was. So how do we do it in a different way?
I would like to talk about, so Tide, we did launch with in-person tours, they're full. And we had an in-person 8th grade outdoor event last week, required vaccination, not very different than, it was 8th grade information night, not very different than gathering people for the big events like football games, which I dearly miss. But we had Foothill College partners, lots of engagement, lots of questions. So I agree. I think we can up the level of marketing, and huge shout out actually to Anna, who helped connect us to Volaire to do a recruitment video. It looks like a private school video. It is professional. It was well done, right? So I think just for all of our schools, there's a lot we can do for that. And so as the small schools, we need to be able to think outside the box to bring people. People are tired of virtual engagement. I know that, right? And so what can we do to be creative? for that. The other piece, I just want to address engagement since it's come up. We give students a survey. When you take a survey, how engaged are you in answering questions, right? So part of it, I'm not saying the data doesn't speak to, right? And we want to address it, but we also have these community engagement evenings. We ask students to talk to us about their experiences. When you ask a student, you're engaging them, you learn so much more because there's so many nuances to what engagement is on so many levels. And if I'm answering a question that asks me, do I go and talk about what I learn at school at home? That to me is not engaging in school. So of course I'm going to probably say no, right? So I think we can really look to be innovative in the questions we do ask to really, as Bonnie said, drill down and try to parse out what does engagement mean, right? And so I am a fan of qualitative data. I walk around all day talking to kids. To me, that's engagement, and that's how we're going to see them engage. And those pieces are important. So now how do we capture that in a metric, I guess is a question. So I just wanted to add that lens, but thank you for all the lovely questions. Much appreciated.
Dr. Williams.
I just wanted to say, I want to give a shout out and just a big thank you to our team for doing an exceptional job in terms of gathering the information, establishing the metrics, and then also communicating in a way in which we could all follow and understand the great work that we're doing. I have two comments. One, we are excellence. When we measure ourselves, just as when you use the term closing the achievement gap, we have an established standard of excellence. That means that we are all headed towards that excellence, be it in instruction, be it in attendance. If we want 100% attendance, then we're all moving in the same direction. So we are not comparing ourselves to any other institution except for a thriving institution. So be it, we can call it what you may. I have excellent teachers that I am leading every day, phenomenal leaders at the school site. Also, our support staff and our cabinet, we do an excellent and phenomenal job in educating children every day. And we are the first choice in San Mateo, not only in San Mateo County, but in California. So I just wanted to keep that conversation where it belongs on an upward trajectory. And another point that I wanted to raise as your wonderful superintendent, as to Ms. Hanson's point, we are being responsible. It is our responsibility to ensure safety for everyone. So if in fact we are putting a pause on shadowing opportunities and also visits, that just means that it is challenging us to come out creatively with different methods that we can still extend the opportunities to engage within our school communities. So please don't look at that as a barrier to access to our wonderful schools and our school programs. Just look at it as taking it to the next level, because we are now challenged to engage you in a variety of ways, and we do take the opportunity. And I thank my principals for being a part of the decision. And so I know someone said the schools were not involved, but the schools were involved via the leadership of their principals. And we have two principals working on a committee to make recommendations in terms of how we can move forward with shadowing and then also with school tours. So I just wanted to make those clarifications and just say, I am proud of Sequoia Union High School District this evening. Thank you.
I don't think we can top that for a closer. I have been monitoring. I haven't seen any Zoom hands go up for comment on this or seen any cards come in. So with that, okay, I believe, Bonnie, you may still be sharing your screen. Nope. Okay. Nope. Nope. Then I'll get myself. Okay, and I am straightened out and we're ready to move on to our first discussion item, 14.1, discussion of the English Learner Master Plan. Bonnie, it's been a while since we've seen you at the podium.
Surprise! I won't be here for long. So as you're also very well aware of, our most significant, largest group of students who we are struggling to help them realize their full potential is our second language learners. And I have got with me tonight the dream team, and I'm going to let them do the talking. So don't start that clock yet, Darnice, because they had a 25-minute presentation and they had been practicing and practicing. And when they came in tonight, they said it was 14 minutes and 59 seconds. There's a lot to say. They're going to be back for your approval in December after they take it around to the BRTs and the principals and ELAC, DLAC memberships. And without further ado, I give you Diana and Vicky and Janelle. Thank you for all the Yale person's work this represents.
All right. Let's see, this isn't what we're looking at. We're looking at the oh. Okay, great. All right, let's start at the very beginning. Okay, great. All right, President Sarver, trustees, Superintendent Williams, Cabinet, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening about the EL Master Plan. We are all very passionate about our English learners, and they're all our students. So we're excited to provide an update about the English Learner Master Plan. And the first thing I'd like to do is set a little context for the creation of this plan. We've been engaged in a multi-year study with renowned researchers from Stanford and our partner districts to examine the outcomes of our English learners, and the findings mirror our own, that English learners have 20 to 30% lower chance of graduating on time than their peers. But on the other hand, English learners who reclassify as fluent English proficient, especially in elementary and middle school, have a much higher chance to graduate from high school on time than English learners who do not. So we know what we need to do. Significant change also in terms of context, significant changes took place in the 2019-20 school year around the Ed Services Division, in so much as the EL services used to be housed in its own department, and now it's shared between the Professional Development and Curriculum Department and the Research and Evaluation Department. And the amazing Janelle Bugarini was hired as the coordinator of English learners and literacy at that time. And since then, she's led our efforts to take stock of the reality of what was in place for our English learner services, and to implement some immediate improvements, and then to set goals for ongoing work. And that's what is all of that with input from stakeholder groups across the district, including BRTs, administrators, ELD teachers, and most importantly, students. In fact, that was one of the first things we did. All of this is captured in this plan. And so we're going to come back, like Bonnie said, in December to seek your approval of the plan. And we want to preview it tonight. We're going to continue to our road show to get input and make it better in the meantime. And so that's what we're going to do. And then, oh, I'm not clicking. Thank you. All right, there we go. And now I'm trying to click. No, I want to go for it. Okay, so in this presentation, we're going to lay out our goals for English learners and explain the components of our EL program that we took stock of and that we've been improving. And English learners and redesignated students make up a third of our students. So it's a diverse group, and we need to understand the different groups and our priorities. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. And finally, we're going to discuss how we monitor student progress and reclassify students as fluent English proficient, because that's what we need to do. All right, so.
Thank you. So to set the stage for tonight's conversation, I'm going to share with you 3 scenarios. First, Marquis, who is a newcomer, and then Amanda, who is a long-term English learner, and then finally, Janice, who's a reclassified student. Marquis is one of our English learners who recently arrived to the US. He started here as a freshman and was enrolled in the designated ELD program for the last 3 years. As a junior, he participated in summer school after freshman and sophomore year, and he's currently on track to graduate with a GPA over 2.0. While his native language is Spanish, he is working towards English proficiency, as demonstrated on the LPAC that he must take every year until he reclassifies. He represents 25% of our EL population. Amanda is a long-term English learner because she has been in the US schools over 6 years. In fact, she's been here since kindergarten. And she is struggling to demonstrate proficiency on the LPAC. She's also failing 2 courses and not yet on track to graduate. We will share. Timeout.
The folks at home aren't seeing what we're seeing here. So we're going to pause for 5 seconds and then they will.
Amanda is back. Okay, no problem. Okay. Amanda, unfortunately, is failing 2 courses and not yet on track to graduate. We will share some updated approaches to help monitor these students and help them reclassify. As Vicki shared, our work with Stanford focuses on our outcomes for LTELs, and we're working to improve these students, particularly in their graduation rate and reclassification rates. Right? No, I can't move it. Okay. I've lost control of the screen. Okay. Jan is a current senior who is in the US schools for 10 years. Jan was reclassified as English proficient as a freshman. Jan will be monitored by our staff the entire time that they're in high school. Is he passing all his classes? Yes. He's on track to graduate? Yes. Is he on track to meet A through G? No. And he is enrolled in an AVID program and does require meetings for monitoring our progress. So the slide, okay. Oh, there we go. There we go. Awesome. Okay. So I think, we have 9,600 students in our district, roughly. I mean, approximately. 1 out of 3 of them are either English learners or RFEP. So we have about 2,000 RFEP students, 900 LTELs, 300 newcomers. So that's like a rough number to kind of like keep in your head. So if you look at just our EL populations, as I mentioned, 1/4 are newcomers and 75% are typically our LTEL populations. If you break it down into these typologies, the 1/4, the 0 to 3 years, they're enrolled in our designated ELD program, which Janelle will share with you. There's been a lot of the work has been an effort over the last 1.5 years. And then 3/4 of our students are enrolled in mainstream classes, participating in integrated ELD instructional strategies. Our students speak 32 different home languages, which is amazing and an asset to our district. The large majority of them speak Spanish. And we are starting to look at numbers of students coming to our district that is going to mirror 18-19 or prior years, maybe even surpass that. The last 2 years, the students coming were much less due to the pandemic. If you look at our enrollment across our schools, we have ELs in every single school in our district. The greatest concentration of them are at Sequoia, MA, and Woodside. And Janelle will share more about the master plan.
Hello, everyone. In the context of the information you've heard, the EL master plan is both visionary and goal-driven. And in order to make that possible, we must establish and deliver educational program where students experience academic success, develop a sense of belonging, and build a strong foundation to realize their goals and dreams. In addition, we have set goals for English learners to make progress towards English proficiency, reclassified as fluent in English, meet graduation requirements and college and career pathways requirements as well. But how do we hold ourselves accountable to actually ensure that we're making progress in our goals? In order to do that, we have multiple reports which include metrics in our LCAP and in the Title III evaluation, which looks at the LPAC summative assessment the result, and how students are progressing towards making efforts to gain reclassification. In addition, we're setting our own internal goals around reclassification and improving our process for monitoring students. Currently, we're designing a plan to empower our students to understand this process and set their personal goals around reclassification. Now, the EL master plan is about 70 pages long, and I'm going to try to do our best to summarize the 6 elements that are important in understanding all of our efforts that we're doing to support our English learners. The 6 components of the academic framework for English learner success drive the organization of the EL master plan. In the next few slides, we will walk you through these 6 components. It is important to highlight that the 3 components on the top of the framework focus on supporting classroom practice and monitoring for student progress, while the bottom of the framework includes the leadership supports, teacher support, ongoing professional development, and how we include and support family engagement and welcome newcomer students to our district. One second. All right, guys. Trick game here. One second. Well, let me start talking about the first element. I don't want to run out of time. Okay, thank you. I'm really concerned about this. Okay, our first, well, this still continues to talk about a little bit about the sections that I'll be talking about. So after taking initial inventory, an urgent item that quickly rose to the top of the list when I came on board as the EL coordinator was to update the instructional materials and to create cohesion across our ELD and ELA courses. In the last couple of years, we've worked to develop standards maps, crosswalks, piloted and adopted instructional materials that are aligned to the ELD and ELA standards in order to provide students with rigorous and scaffolded instruction. We're also continuing our work on aligning benchmarks to the adopted curriculum to identify student need, monitor student progress, and curriculum implementation. For integrated ELD, our long-term English learner students participate in mainstream classes that offer integrated ELD, meaning the ELD standards are woven into the instructional delivery to support their English language acquisition. We offer support classes for students who are enrolled in grade level or benchmark courses, but need additional support to be successful. In addition, our newcomer students enroll in LEP classes in math, science, and social studies, which are designed to help them learn their content area and further support their English language acquisition. The 4th component focuses on assessment, placement, and monitoring. As part of our process for monitoring student progress, we start with the initial LPAC and measure student progress each year with the summative LPAC. We are working on additional instruments and assessments to measure primary language proficiency as we approach, language proficiency as we know that it supports biliteracy and shifts our practice to focus on an asset-based approach to improve our programs for students. You will continue to hear about how important reclassification is throughout the presentation. Our English Learner Induction and Newcomer Welcome Center. This is the newest initiative that we have implemented this year, just in time as our newcomer population, as you heard earlier, continues to grow at a rate similar to the 18-19 school year and may likely surpass that number. We have recently hired a district newcomer family liaison and began a district-wide effort to address the need for our newcomer English learners. The emphasis of this induction is to provide a warm welcome for families and the direct support around needed services, providing students with the common experience for entering our district, including placement, testing, and registration. I'm going to pass it on to Vicki to talk about the last 2 components.
All right, so we've discussed 4 components of our framework in our master plan, and the next one has to do with making sure that we have input from the right people and the right personnel. And the last one has to do with ongoing professional development, and supporting instructional improvement is a continuing priority. We've identified a focus area, including designated ELD instruction strategies, trauma-informed practices, particularly for some of our newcomers, with some of our newcomer students in mind. And additionally, a high area of need is to provide support for LEP teachers who are subject area teachers teaching newcomer students. Finally, about 4 years ago, we embarked on a plan to provide training for all staff in the area of integrated ELD. So you could walk into any classroom in the district and there would be great strategies used to support English learners as they're in all of our classes, especially our long-term English learners. So we use a program called Constructing Meaning, and it's crucially important, continues to be.
So as we shared with you earlier, our long-term English learners are the focus of our research with our Stanford partnership, and we're in the midst of trying to shore up our monitoring process and improve our reclassification rates. We know that students who reclassify have a greater likelihood of graduating regardless of other risk factors. So as you can see, we nearly have 1,000 students who could be classified as LTEL or at risk of becoming LTEL. The vast majority of our students in this group who have been here for over 4 years are still struggling to pass the LPAC. However, I do want to point out that nearly half, or almost half, depending on the grade level, of our English learners are enrolled in grade level English. And it's important to recognize, as Vicki demonstrated, we have been providing Constructing Meaning, which is a professional development program for our teachers over the last 5 years, for our teachers to integrate ELD standards into their instructional delivery. Our students who are enrolled in grade level English, many of them participate in a support program. So they take it alongside their grade level English class. And more than half of our 9th and 10th graders who have this class are English learners enrolled in this support class. And almost 2/3 of our EL students participate in our college and career readiness programs like AVID, Build, 49ers Academy, Boys and Girls Club, Academies, Upward Bound, etc. When I took a look at the current trend of this year's class, 21-22, I'm looking at this year's 10th, 11th, and 12th graders because the 9th graders just got here. So looking at them, we could see that of these students, the 10th graders, what they earned in last year, only 40% of our ELs who are 10th graders earned enough credits last year to be on track to graduate. Similarly, our 11th graders, 39%, and then of our 12th graders, 46% are on track to graduate. This is a similar pattern found by Stanford, that if their overall GPA is less than a 2.0, and they're not earning enough credits to graduate, even by senior year, hopefully they will catch up and graduate, but there's a less of a likelihood. While we see more students enrolled in AP, IB, and honors classes as they go up in grades, it's still only a handful of students. The majority of our LTEL students are still working towards English proficiency on the LPAC. So we want to focus on reclassification. Why? Because if you look at the graph and if you read the research from Stanford, it's clear that students who reclassify are on track when they enter, are more likely to be on track when they enter in 9th grade. And this is data over the last 4 years in average. They stay on track in 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. They graduate at a similar rate to everyone else in our district. They don't meet A through G requirements, or RFEP students don't meet A through G requirements at the same rate as other students in our district. I do believe that might be something we want to work on, maybe add as a metric to our LCAP, but we'll write that in later. But you could see from the data here, it's clear that reclassifying does make a huge difference for students. So we've updated, and in the midst of the pandemic last year, we had to come up with another solution for reclassifying our students. We moved to the Lexile, which is a growth measure. Trustee Jin, you'll be happy to know, it is a growth measure that many people are familiar with in the world, as far as a growth measure that we could use to align across assessments, across scenarios. And in this case, we've moved, for example, our 9th grade placement chart is now based on Lexiles for English language arts placement. Our transfer placement process is now based on Lexiles. When we get this year's 8th grade, 11th grade CASP scores, the state is going to be reporting Lexiles. So I felt maybe it makes sense to have reclassification also based in Lexiles. We ran this through our BRTs last year and came up with some cut points that we thought made sense to align with last year, that, you know, all the prior years' cut points. And this is to replace what used to be the GMRT. If you were familiar with that, used to be on our reclassification local criteria. And so the new plan, I'll talk about the individualized reclassification plan, but I do want to point out here that we did set cut points using Lexiles with a 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade cut points. And just for a point of reference, the 11th grade minimum 1045 is similar to what you might need to pass the DMV driving test. There is sort of like a, you know, there's a scale of common reading that one would need to do. The individualized reclassification plan is something that's really important to us because we feel like more students, if they reclassify, will graduate. If we look at our RFEP students, there's 2,000 in the district. Again, that's 1 out of every 5 students in our district are reclassified. And these students overwhelmingly come to us reclassified. But we still monitor 71% of them because they're within the 4-year state requirements. It's also important to note that over a quarter of our RFEP students are enrolled in AP, IB, and honors courses. And yet again, I want to support the claim that RFEP students do fare better in terms of outcomes. We can see in this year's graduating class of 2022 that they are on track in terms of what they earned in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. Their GPA is well above a 2.0, so they do appear on track to graduate. And Vicki will share our last slide.
So in sum, there's been hugely meaningful work over the last couple of years, even amidst the pandemic, major accomplishments, and there is much more to do. For our next steps, I want to call out our articulation with partner districts. We have a meeting coming up, and we're going to be working across the county with our partners to make sure that our efforts, especially around redesignation, are aligned. We're going to continue working with our Stanford partners, and we're going to see you again in December, hopefully for an approval of this plan after you sit at home with those 70 pages, enjoying it very much, I'm sure. All right. Thank you.
So before I get anybody into this, I'd like to, I found it to be a fascinating 70-page read. It was dense, it is impressive. What resonates throughout it is the tremendous amount of thought and energy and resource that has gone into the planning of how we approach the work, and how very much effort is dedicated throughout our district to this work. And again, I'm struck by the alignment of our detailed planning, our implementation, our accountability to the goals, and that we're moving all the way throughout. And I want to echo the comments that Trustee Ginn put out there, that, you know, the longitudinal results and the seeing the upward trends, and that closing our gaps by lifting our boats, and all of those good things really are the long-term way that we have to see this. I know there is no shortage of the amount of goodwill and strong effort that has gone into our Yale environment over many past years, as well as recent times. This is a district that has been very focused on these issues, very aware of where some of the greatest need and the largest numbers in our district are, and the rate at which the need in the community is growing and the challenges are becoming greater. And as we continue to focus and put more into this in just the right ways, which is what I believe we're seeing here, we have to be sure that we're continuing to see the results coming in. One of the things I'm very much struck with the concept of RFEP just overarches everything. And it's one of those tricky things that in and of itself, it's the most attractive, the most glaringly important target and result to be sought after. But what it really is a marker of readiness to move on and engage successfully in the broader work that's out there. When we say that outcomes are, educational outcomes are stronger and more positive for our RFEP students than for our LTELs and for our newcomers. We know intuitively, of course, that makes sense, but it's recognizing that we're working to bring them to this point where you can say, okay, I've got it to the point that I can really engage in academic language and thrive at the business of academic education overall. It's kind of that transition that we're so aware of between third and fourth grade, that you're learning to read until you're finally reading to learn. And this is what we're really after. And RFEP is really code for that transition in our high school world of English language learners. And those are the place where our numbers and the payoff is going to continue to be so visible and so explosively valuable to student outcomes. And I look forward to really seeing the impacts that this carefully focused work is going to continue to bring in that regard. And having gone first, I welcome Trustee Thompson.
Start this way. Look, I think you're doing really important work, and it seems like you're giving your all and you're being smart about it. And so I am grateful for that. The questions that I have for you are one, this is a tri-district collaboration. Might you say a word about the work with the elementary school districts? Because obviously we have an interest in their success at bringing along, in tackling the same challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Janelle, would you like to discuss the partner district meeting that we have coming up?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So in collaboration with the San Mateo County Office of Ed, we've had some discussions around how do we work together to ensure that, our students, as we get students in ninth grade, we want to make sure that we are aligning our programs, our services for English learners, so that when we get students into our district, we're working with students who, actually just even begin to learn what their reclassification processes are. And so a lot of that sometimes, like, are they using Lexile score? What are they measuring? We want to think about what some obstacles are getting in the way of reclassification at a lower level, and work with our partner districts to ensure that when we get students into the ninth grade, we're working, like, for the most part, students who are long-term English learners have been reclassified, prior to arriving at our schools.
And to the extent that the LTELs are almost by definition ones who started out before Sequoia, and they're the most difficult group.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a key problem,
Yeah.
key challenge to address. Second, I think I might follow up to hear more about the elementary school collaboration, what's happening there. Second is, I assume this is an evidence-based program, that it was not created de novo by the district. And so I'm curious whether there's evidence from other similar districts with success here, so we might know what to expect as results.
For this
Or
for collaborative, or just in general?
well, this work presumably has been tested in other places.
Yeah, I mean, having adopted curriculum and standards alignment has a research base for sure. That's one component. Essentially, the master plan identifies all of the kind of parts of our work with English learner services. So each one, yes, has a research base, and can talk about.
Well, actually, I guess my basic question is, what might we expect as a result of full implementation on this? And is that apparent in the LCAP scorecard?
Yeah, and I think, yes, and I would love to hear your input. I also think that it also depends, what we might see depends on what we're looking at and the students that we're looking at. So We are, for example, in our work with integrated ELD, we're talking mostly about supporting language and content area classes across the board, right? And so the results we might see with full implementation and robust and work in this area will definitely be reflected in the LCAP scorecard through increased achievement for all students. And similarly, in our work with designated ELD curriculum, I think we'll be able to see the results in our LPAC scores year over year, our entry and exit assessments that we have for those courses. We have good curriculum that's being implemented and supported for the ELD 1 through 3 courses now, which is something that we didn't have prior to this. So looking at each component of the EL master plan, we could identify what the expected outcomes and the metrics we would use to measure it are, and that's a part of the plan.
So we don't know yet exactly what.
I would just add, let's just add a little bit. If you, and I'm going to report a little bit more of this in December. There was so much to share with you that we had to cut our slides in half. One of the things we wanted to share with you tonight, but we decided to push off till December, was the Title III evaluation, which really looks at how is our program doing in retrospect to LPAC progress, reclassification rates, et cetera. And so there is a hyperlink in there with a kind of, we went in the master plan where I did a preliminary evaluation for the FPM process that we just went through, the federal program monitoring process for our EL instrument. And you could see, and we've been talking with our BRTs about it, our reclassification rates over the last 3 years have tripled. I mean, we had 113 reclassified last year, but 2 years ago, I don't remember the exact number, but it was not 3 digits. It was, maybe it was like in the 50s or something. I don't remember. I have to look at the number, but it went up considerably. So I would expect that if we work on reclassification and we really put an emphasis towards it, that we're going to see higher reclassification rates here at Sequoia Union High School District. I would also suspect that our LPAC, students who are progressing on our LPAC would also increase. That I haven't seen that much of a change in over the last several years, but our reclassification rates have gone up. Bonnie might be behind me trying to add some more, please.
Well, if I could only have one cookbook for the rest of my life, it would be Cooking Basics. And this EL master plan is our Cooking Basics for EL students. And if I ask the authors of Cooking Basics where they drew their research from and how they made the decisions for the different recipes, they're going to tell you a whole bunch of different sources, which is why it makes it difficult to answer your perfectly logical question. So there are things like the EL roadmap, there are best practices of districts around us. There's input from Stanford and some of the studies and readings that we've done there. The greatest outcome, I would say, a couple of things I'm proud of with what they have done, this team has done, is they've really said, we need to focus the efforts at the district level of what we are doing for our newcomers, because their needs are so in your face and they're so Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, let's make sure you've got a warm place to sleep and that you feel safe, that our BRTs can spend all of their time on that 25% of the students in our district. And then in the meantime, we've got 75% of our students, many of whom have been here since kindergarten, who are not graduating from our schools, even though they've been here since kindergarten. So one thing I've really appreciated is the work that this team has done with the Newcomer Center is allowing space for the BRTs and for the teams at the sites to focus more on, okay, guys, what are we strategically doing for our LTEL students? And the ultimate results of our job of what we should ultimately see with these kids is higher numbers of kids in IBAP classes, higher numbers of students reaching UCA through G. What you should ultimately see if we do what we want to do is nothing to see, because they blend.
Which would be nice. I think what I was trying to get at, maybe it was a little obtuse, was knowing what to expect from this after a couple of years. And I think you're telling me it's really coming from lots of different, it's a messy kind of problem and hard to predict.
I think you should see higher UCA through G completion and graduation rates.
But high, and certainly that's within the plan. I guess I'm curious about the slope of something. Seems like this is a pretty major change, pretty major implementation.
Yeah,
Does it change the slope of improvement from this to that? And what's realistic? What can we expect?
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Let me,
The slope's been like this for years.
so improving the slope is, well, we're ambitious and want to be leaders. Right? The final thing is, it seems to be, I don't know whether you answered this or whether the principals answered this, but this has got to be an implementation challenge as well, because it's a complicated program that involves a lot of teaching staff. Thoughts about that other than, I mean, how do we make sure the implementation works, is successful?
Piece by piece. So tackling it one element at a time, or not at a time, simultaneously. So, you know, like I said, as we supported teachers. Yeah.
I mean, I can talk a little bit about that, but I think as we support the implementation of LD, the new adopted curriculum, we're supporting teachers with, you know, check-in meetings. We're trying to do cohort coming together as a each level of instruction of ELD. In addition, you know, we want to continue to grow the constructing meaning institutes and make sure more people are aware, you know, aware of the instructional strategies to ensure that students are, you know, having the opportunities to increase their language use, and also have the way to jump into conversations and be part of the, you know, what's going on in their classroom around them. And so we want to ensure that that continues to grow as well. But, you know, yeah, it is piece by piece. And I think as I started sort of to envision how do we tackle it all, I think it was like those 6 structures or 6 components that they're really outline the needs within for our English learners, but also cover the gamut of who our English learners are, because we have students who maybe are just going to, you know, like are trying to get vaccines completed to complete registration today, and also students who have been here for years. And I think in that master plan, we're trying to like really talk about what services do we provide, aligned to the California English Learner Roadmap, and really take a look at in those sections. How do we continue to grow? What have we done and what are we doing? How do we then continue to change in years moving forward from this? But I think with this master plan, it really gives us a foundation to grow from. And I think that's step one. And that's why we're asking you, you know, I'll be asking you for your approval in a future meeting, but establishing that benchmark so that we can have something to move and continue to grow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I am grateful for your work.
And, you know, just to note, when Bonnie talked about the focus on newcomers, it was like she said, it was a matter of triage and needing to work on some really urgent needs right away. You know, having curriculum for them, and then we went out to every site and spoke with administrators and students, had focus groups to hear about what the experience was as students entered the school and what the challenges were for students to enter school. And we realized how much energy it took up and how much of a challenge it was for BRTs to do their work as, you know, in an unpredictable and, you know, hard to adapt to way. Students would come in and they would need to stop everything and test them and, you know, learn what their needs were and identify what their home language literacy skills were. And now students, when they enter, because Janelle collaborated with Alvaro and Student Services and worked together to create a great process for bringing in newcomer students and welcoming them consistently and providing great information to sites about how they're coming to us. It's made that process smoother. And, you know, so the other way that we're going to tackle this is by continuous monitoring and continuously learning from the people that we're serving and the students and the sites about how to do better. So we've got a framework for work that will continue to inform by, you know, talking to the right people and looking at the right data.
I know Shanice wanted to be next. I wanted to make a quick comment in transition that to me, the you know, the newcomers, the at risk of becoming LTEL and the LTEL groups are really like an inversion of the MTSS pyramid, that you have got your entry point is a relatively small group of intense complete need. And then you move to a smaller group that is conversant with navigating the pathways of the education system, but not strong enough to really get by in their language. And then you've got the ones that have settled in that are short of this magic RFEP point. And really what we're talking about is having a coordinated, organized structure for dealing with the unique needs of each group and having the right things in place so that being able to react to these different sets of needs does not distract and detract from providing the proper support for the other groups, because they all need it at all times. Janice, I'm back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the report. I have a couple of questions. I've been reading the accountability plan, the roadmap to California. So by the time I got to this, I was like, I hope I understand, but I don't understand everything. So I'm just going to ask the questions that I really am passionate about. First of all, Bonnie, I remember Abby Corman, many different meetings talking about the plan. Is this the plan for the early language learners, ELL students? And is this report required?
I would rather have Abby Corman answer that question, but I believe this is the plan to which she is referring.
Thank you. And is it required by the state or just something that
It
we?
used to be required by the state. It's not anymore, but it's considered best practice.
Thank you. So we're doing this because we really care about kids and not because somebody told us to do it.
You got it.
Thank you for caring about our kids. Next thing, the next question, this is for Dr. Williams and the rest of the board, because I still consider myself new until December 15th, which I'll make a year. So I'm just gonna milk that until December 15th. Is this the ELL advisory committee I signed up for, or has that happened, or where the board goes to a committee?
Right. And so, yes, you have signed up for this committee, and we will be convening the committee, and you are a part of the committee. At that point, we will be able to address your many questions that you have. If I may, though, just as a point of context, and I wanted to thank the team again for doing a great job, because this is so essential in terms of the transformative changes that we want to see in the district that moves towards excellence, because we're all moving in the same direction. So the purpose of this, and to Trustee Thomas's question is, what do we expect to see? So what we expect to see is effective instruction in terms of for our English learners. And then also we want to answer the why, the what, and the how we are preparing our diverse language learners for college and beyond. And so to do that, we have to have our benchmarks and our indicators. And so this plan has done a great job in outlining those indicators and benchmarks. And so when you say, what does research say? Well, districts that have used the master plan and have used and focused their instruction around the indicators and benchmarks, they do see a higher reclassification rate. They do see more students who are A through enrolled and successfully completing A through G courses. And then also, which leads to a higher graduation rate and then preparation for college and beyond. And so that is the whole premise for this document, which is a massive document of excellence because it has resources, it lays out the expectation, and then it also lays out our opportunity to respond to our English language learners or standard English learners. And so I just wanted to frame that for us a little bit in terms of the Lexile. All of that is research-based. We know Lexiles has been around for the longest. That's how we measure the difficulty of text, and then also reading levels for our students. And so just to know, again, appreciation for this work, and we will be glad to answer your questions in committee as well as now.
I do have just two more questions. Thank you for trying to get me to not to ask the questions, but I do have the questions. And I say that with all love. Okay. So page 56 of the plan, you put in there, every site has a community involvement plan. It was under family engagement. Love for you to tell me what that is, very short. 2, there was on page 30, parents have a right to be consulted with their child's learning plan. Do ELL students who are ELL get a plan like an IEP or a learning plan or something like that? That's kind of what I'm thinking. Or is it just like, here's your trajectory, kind of like what we've been doing? So that's another thing. And then the last piece, and this is the only question, I will not come back on after this, but do we keep involvement data for our students? Meaning particularly for these students, there's something you said that triggered data for me, because we're always talking about data at my job as well, because we need to know the strategies that work for them. So kids who are able to make it through, you said a lot of them are an avid and this, that, and other. Is that part of their cumulative plan? And do you ever look at like looking at the Excel or whatever numbers you said, and also kids, and also looking at what they're involved in, and did they make it through? Did they not make it through? Was it sports? Was it like, was it Live in Peace? Was it Boys and Girls Club? Like to help us kind of understand, really, those things aren't just tutoring, they're actually leadership stuff within that and social and emotional learning. So I'm just trying to think about like, what are the ingredients that help kids, students, sorry, I apologize, students, become successful and move through the reclassification and all that? Like, are there some, I'm trying to think, are there any patterns? So those are my questions, and then I'm done.
I think
Thank you.
I'll start with that last question. One of the things that we want to continue to look at as we move our efforts forward to better understand where are our students performing better, right? Like one of the things that we listed in our next steps in the presentation was taking a look at how are our long-term English learners performing in academies, right? We have smaller programs. Are students doing better in a smaller program? Our students, how are students comparing in terms of their outcomes academically once they're being part of this? So we took a sort of like inventory of which programs our students are participating in, but not like what, because they're participating in this or making any correlations between because they're participating in what their outcomes are. So we're going to continue to look at that information. And I think further, when we come back in the Title III evaluation, take a look at more of that, a little bit of that breakdown. In addition, also with the CT, we wanted to continue to increase CT pathways and ensuring like, what are other pathways towards graduation and preparing our students for college and career outside of after high school. And so we're going to continue to embark on researching some of that information as well. Family engagement, yes, all of the sites, and I think last year was a little bit of a break in that all that work, but sites do have a sort of community involvement around like what are the different family nights that are happening at their site for the year. I know that before bilingual parent liaisons in communication with their site administration and what's happening at the sites, we put together a plan around how our families being engaged during that school year at each of their sites. But that is a practice that we need to continue to make sure that it was interrupted a little bit last year. And there was another question.
The one was that I had the question.
Oh yes, parents. Yeah. So at the beginning of you talked about parents and informing their parents of sort of like ongoing progress. And so initially with the initial LPAC, there is a conversation that happens with parents around like, why are we testing your student, right? There's an initial LPAC that as students are identified through our registration process, if another language is spoken at home, then students are being evaluated with the initial LPAC new to the state. So if our students are coming from a feeder districts, most likely they've been already taken the test, the initial LPAC. But in that process, we are communicating with families around what are the different programs that we offer at the district office, what are the different pathways, and ensuring that they understand sort of why are they taking the test, where we're putting you in the ELD program, or depending on how they do on the assessment, what are the different educational pathways available to them at the time. And so that's part initially of the process. Then families throughout, like every year, our families just recently received a Title III letter Title III letter. We'll talk about the Title III evaluation. So the Title III informs families of how students perform in the LPAC and gives them a breakdown of how students are doing year after year as they take this test. So there's several mailers that are going home to just inform them how their students are progressing throughout. And then they're also part of the reclassification process. Okay. So there's there's parent communication around how students are doing. And they're a critical part of completing that reclassification process as well.
So parents are involved, but I'm just equating it to kids with an IEP or SST or whatever. Families don't get sit down and have a plan around their child's, what is it called? Their child's learning plan because they are like ELL.
No,
No.
no, but that's something but we do want to, like, as we take a look at monitoring and we talked about just the monitoring plan in, there's a name for that. It's just escaping my individualized monitoring reclassification plan. Yeah, it's like it's a new acronym in my mind. But we are working to to create sort of like a student facing tool for students to understand what does this designation even mean to me, and how am I how do we empower the students to understand that part of their educational pathway, and how do they set goals for themselves to work towards reclassification. And in addition, there is going to be a form that we are also, parents are part of that conversation as well. But that's a new, redesigning the process that we're wanting to put into place.
I just want to say that is good when I'm thinking about parents who are trying to figure out why their kids are not graduating, or they're not graduating with the right kinds of things to progress financially. Because we know kids who need a high school diploma is the first start of being self-sufficient and having access financially. But we know associate or certification in some specialty skill also helps them. So I'm looking at this as a financial stability as well, and impacting what we call food security, housing instability. Like the first step is getting a high school diploma, and then the next step is having a specialized skill. So when I'm hearing this, if I am a parent, I'm not a parent of an ELL student, so I'm not thinking, I don't have that experience. So I'm only thinking about like from a social needs perspective, and making sure our kids really get what they need, and that the parents understand what their kids need, because then they can reinforce at home about what it is. But if they don't have one of the things I think is hard with high school is that you don't get to talk to your teachers really unless there's a problem. And so I think that I appreciate my IEP. I appreciate all those different things. And I know I'm very fortunate to have that, because I'm part of a protected system. But if we're thinking about doing something like this, I would really love for us to think about, if it doesn't cost too much and all the budget and all that kind of stuff, like if we could do it pie in the sky, no problem, to really think about how do we engage families in the process.
Yeah, and we do engage our parents in the process, and just understanding what all of these different terms are at the sites, at the ELAC committee, with the ELAC committee, English language, the parent committee at the sites, the advisory committee at the sites, and also at the district English language advisory committee at the district level, where there's representatives from all of the sites that come and meet with me a few times a year. And so those conversations are happening, and making sure that we're involving them in what that means. What is LPAC, and how do they provide practice for students, or how do they support them in that? But it's difficult to support them if they don't understand those processes. But there are different areas within the sites and at the district level where we are continuing to educate parents around all of these things.
So thank you all. I appreciate the report. I know I had a lot of questions, but I really do appreciate the information. Thank you.
Carrie?
I just have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for the report, the energy, the enthusiasm, the teamwork. I think this means amazing leadership from our assistant superintendent. So I thank you all for all of this. First question, Janelle, I think you told us this the last time you presented to the board. Where is the Welcoming Center, and can we come and visit sometime? Is there a way for us?
Yeah, Shanice passed by earlier, and we were able to talk to her a little bit. Lily Quinones, it's our district family newcomer liaison. And she's just right down the hallway here where Alvaro's office used to be.
So I would love to come. Did you already visit?
I walked by there and Lily said hi.
Okay,
we welcomed her. Yes, you can come by.
A board visit, or you and I can visit.
Yeah, we are more than happy to have you guys come in. It's a small place right now. I think, again, the position was, I think, adopted sometime at the end of June.
Yeah.
And so we worked really hard to get it going by the time that school started. We're setting up sort of like in conjunction with in teamwork really with the student services, try to recreate the enrollment process for newcomers. So really Lily's walking them through every step of the way, like really really warm welcome in terms of where do they go get vaccinations? How do we help support them? And we're still working on decorating the space, but you're definitely welcome to come visit anytime you'd like.
Super exciting.
Yes.
Okay, my next question is a little harder. So it seems like our philosophy has changed on one thing, this idea that, graduating all of our kids with their 4-year cohort. One of the first trainings I went to several years ago on the opportunity gap. A couple of the speakers really stressed that there are kids who need 5 years, and that was our philosophy. And happens sometimes since I've done this district. It's like our philosophy changed, and then I don't remember really talking about it or debating it. This also came up at the state SARB meeting. Fierce debate. There are people who believe that some of our kids need 5 years. And on this plan, it's like we're now saying that equity is 4 years. And who I'm picturing right now, I remember somebody at Woodside several years ago talked about some of our students who arrived who had very little formal education, very, very, very little, right? We also know that kids who have, maybe some of our chronically absent kids or kids who have moved a lot. There are kids and there's fierce support that some kids need 5 years. And we also see this at Redwood. And so we used to be very proud of this, that we were going to give kids, and this, when you ask the question, are we doing things because the state is telling us to do it or because we believe in it? The state, there's pressure to graduate kids in 4 years. And often the state or the federal government tells educators to do things that are not really in the best interest of kids. So I'm wondering why and when we changed our philosophy that everybody has to graduate in 4 years, and if that is equity to us now.
We have not changed our philosophy at all. The state indicator has changed, which you just spoke to. So now on the California state dashboard, if a kid does not graduate in 4 years, they don't count as a graduate of your district if they're here for 5 or 6 years. So when you're looking at the data and you're comparing our 4-year graduation cohorts, that's just an attempt to compare apples to apples. I think it's really interesting that special ed kids get until age 21. And Shanice, I hear you talking about, hey, basically, why don't these kids have an IEP, right? Like I wish every kid in the district had an IEP. You come in, you sit down with your parents, you look at your progress, you make a plan, you say, what are your passions and how are we going to get you there? We certainly could use that for each of our EL students. The lobby groups are not as good, right? So that doesn't mean we don't do as much as we possibly can. But just like a special ed student might sometimes need additional time, that's totally true for an EL kid as well. Just know that it won't look good on your state dashboard, but if you don't care, I don't care.
It's okay.
We have a couple, in addition, I think there's some other laws that have changed in the state of California. So we have AB 2121 that allows students who are incoming 11th and 12th graders to graduate with the 130 credits instead of the 220. So, to adopt modified graduation requirements to help them get to graduation, because you also take into consideration the courses that they have completed in the 9th and 10th grade if they're coming in with transcripts, and those courses that they're bringing in are not dismissed because they have moved into the country. And so we take that into consideration, and there's a process that happens with student services. Alvaro meets with the families and reviews transcripts and qualifies and see who qualifies to meet the requirements for AB 2120. And there's one more.
And when our newcomer students enter, because Lily can take some time with them and learn about their academic history, we have some information about who our newcomer students are. And just as there are different typologies of overall of our English learner students, within our newcomer subset of students, there are different typologies. We have for every student who comes in, the school site receives, and we have reports of their academic transcripts, their experiences at home and in the transition to this country. And one thing that is striking overall is with how much asset our students arrive in many cases. There were 29 students enrolled at Sequoia High School between August 2nd and now, and 5 pending. For example, of 18 sort of reports that were read, 10 of the students had no gaps in education. Another 4 had, between half a year and a year, and then some others had between 2 and 4 years. So when we think of our newcomer students, I think that we have to understand that many of them come with really good or with academic preparation and great assets, and are already on the way to learning a second language and being, fluent English and Spanish or whatever proficient.
don't want to leave out student trustees at all, so. Okay, all right, well, and I have not seen hands come up or cards come in, so with that, thank you. Obviously, a very stimulating presentation. There's a lot of engagement on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I would, taking a look at the clock. We've been in this session for 2.5 hours and we've been at it for about 5.5 hours. So I think the board would probably profit from a 10-minute recess here. Come back at 8:40. Welcome back, everybody. And, oh, look, we've got one more discussion item and then the decks are cleared for action. So our last discussion item is 14.2, the first reading of the revised board policy 3452, student activity funds. Ms. Leach.
I forgot the first readings are discussion items. Bonnie so graciously reminded me. So tonight I bring you the first reading of board policy 3452. It's related to the student activity fund. The student activity funds were revised by district staff in this revision by the recommendation outlined in the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, also known as FICMAT, Trustee Stevenson, Associated Student Body Account Manual, and the desk reference. So the major changes within this policy from our previously approved policies are clarification for allowable awards and prizes as outlined in the FICMAT manual, as well as scholarship funds associated with donors, which a lot of our clubs like to work directly with. And then approval of club fundraising with specific purposes, raising money for college scholarships, the definition of what that looks like, and that ASB organizations must utilize, even though they participate outside of our general fund, they are still a partner within the district and they must utilize our independent contractor agreement when acquiring paid services from a contractor. So this is the first reading and hopefully we'll come back to you at the next board meeting for approval.
Okay, this is open for discussion by the board. And I'm seeing nothing, so, oh, okay.
Crystal, in the scholarships piece of this, and because I know that we give a lot, I think a lot of the clubs, some of the clubs give out scholarships and stuff. How has this changed from last year to this year, as far as like this fund for scholarships?
So specifically for the scholarships, the numbers have changed. So what happens a lot with scholarships is that the notifications and the checks go out, but they don't always get cashed. And so because it has to clear and the money needs to be spent in that same year, the more scholarships that you have, and we do have a school site that has, I don't know, 5 times what the other school sites have. So it's about kind of bringing everybody in line with those scholarships. And now this is even more important regarding ASB because their accounts have to be accounted for on our ledgers now in Fund 08. That was brought to you at a budget season. You'll see those updates at the interims and the other financial reporting periods.
So is there, after we do this policy, after we do the second reading, what's the implication going out for the students, particularly the scholarships? That's what I'm more concerned about. Is how do we make sure, because we have to clear the book, so there's all these stipulations. So how is that being communicated to the program, to the clubs, but more importantly to the awardees?
So there's no change for the awardees. This is all just process to bring it up with best practices. So it's about leadership, the clubs, and the treasurer at each school site, making sure that they're following best practices related to ASB.
Thank you so much.
So I think in summary, this is recommendations on best financial practices from financial professionals about what should be added to strengthen policy to make sure that we stay out of financial trouble and our student organizations stay out of financial
Absolutely,
trouble.
because that's usually where you see the trouble.
And as such, I think the board is in agreement that we'd be looking forward to seeing this back on consent
On the
for
consent.
approval.
Great, thank you.
All right, now, as promised, we are ready for action. Item 15.1 is consideration and action to approve the employment and improve the employment of Dr. Elizabeth Chacon in the position of Associate Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. It's getting late in the date for many of us.
Well, this is exciting when I saw that my name was on this item as an HR, and that I got to introduce you and welcome you aboard, and hopefully get these 5 wonderful people to approve your employment here. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Chacon to the Sequoia District family. So welcome. She is here. I believe you have seen her credentials, and I ask for your approval of her employment tonight so that she can begin work tomorrow in about 3 hours.
I, for one, would hate to stand in the way of that.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Here,
Aye. Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Welcome. Might we hear from Dr. Chacon?
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much to Dr. Williams, President Sarver, and the Board of Trustees. I got an opportunity to meet many of you through the interview process and some others of you just this evening. So it is a pleasure to see all of you to be in a room together. And I really look forward to being part of the mission of excellence here in Sequoia and to working with you throughout the course of this year and beyond. So thank you.
And we very much welcome not only you and your experience and everything you bring to the role, but also the organizational change that identifies this role and allows us to put more direct focus in this critical area of service. This is going to be a good, strong, important, positive change for the district. Welcome. Okay, next is the approval of the Public Information Officer job description.
Thank you. Good evening once again. And so in an effort to continue to improve our communication processes, and then also to extend our district's mission and goal to fulfill the position of the Public Information Officer, to replace our Executive Senior Assistant to Superintendent of Communication, Ms. Polito, who will be taking on another position. I ask that the board consider adopting the Public Information Officer revised job description.
I should make a quick comment, which is that I had asked for a handful of revisions, and I see them there. That makes for a cleaner, stronger document that's more in alignment with others that we have, which I appreciate very much. And I thank you for that.
One question. I have here that you said I have ability to speak Spanish preferred, and I don't know if Anna could answer this question, but some of our communication is not just speaking Spanish, it's also the biliteracy piece of it. Is that included, or do we use another service for that?
We use an additional service for translation. So we have
Written translation.
for written translation. So in Spanish, yes.
Okay.
And that service, we have someone here within our district who
that's
does
amazing.
translation. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. This is an action item. I would welcome a motion.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, excellent. And our next 15.3 is adoption of resolution number 1700, exemption to the separation from service requirement for independent study teacher. And that's got Bonnie's name on it. You're getting your steps in tonight.
I am, thank goodness. So as you are well aware, ABSB 130 was signed by the governor shortly before the beginning of the school year. And that is a piece of legislation that says that any parent who is concerned about their student's health has the right to an independent study experience this year, provided by the local school district. There was also legislation this summer that we are not allowed to do distance learning, and that was in recognition of the fact that it's better for kids to be at school. So we have a little irony, but I don't sign the paperwork. So I'm here because our independent study program has doubled in size since that legislation passed, and we are in need of another teacher, probably a couple more teachers for the program. We have someone who retired from teaching in the program last year who did a great job. He's willing to come back part-time. And because it meets the statutes put forth by the state of California for employing someone, even though they have not been retired for 180 days, we are asking that you go ahead and approve this.
Unless anyone wants discussion, I'd be happy to make the motion to approve this.
I just have one quick question. It just, Bonnie, you said it doubled from how many to how many?
Well, you're gonna think I'm lying, 50 to 100 today. And that 100 has got 11 kids on a wait list right now.
I made the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And nobody thinks you're lying, Mike.
Weird round number, right?
To the chair, this is a resolution. I think we should have roll call.
It is a resolution. I would ask for a roll call. Thank you.
Student trustee Stead. Student trustee Losuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson,
Yes.
trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Ginn,
Yes.
vice president Dubois,
Yes.
president Sarver.
Yes,
Motion adopted.
thank you. I was so excited by the flood of action. I just got swept along with it. All right, we've got two more approvals ahead of us, which are not resolutions, which will be very helpful, but they do bring us Bonnie's presence again.
So this particular item is the latest round of COVID funding, and it is called the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, or ESSER 3 Fund. And what was required for the creation of this plan was that it have built into it community impact, or excuse me, input, and that it be aligned to the district goals. And it's suggested as a good resource for that, the same community engagement that we use for the development of our LCAP. So as you're very aware, we had things in the LCAP last spring that were want to, but not sure that we can fund items. And this ESSER is helping to make some of those possible. Little side note, when Liz Chacon did her interview, I wanted to stand up and do the wave because I was so excited she was coming. And part of what this proposal has in it is a great deal of money towards mental health that I hope will make she and Jarrett and their team's jobs a little bit easier, because we are seeing a tremendous rise in mental health needs. So there's a lot of funding that goes towards that. You may have seen a state auditor report to state legislation that they were concerned about the way that COVID funds were being used, and that there would need to be some investigations into districts where they weren't sure that they were using those monies appropriately. I am 100% sure that that will not include us. And one of the things that they specified that the auditor said in that report to the assembly was, it's districts that are going for the ESSER 3. There's a third category of other. So they gave us the two categories in which they are recommending that we spend the funds. We are spending all of our funds in those two areas. There is no other for us. So I welcome your questions.
Bonnie, thank you for saying that, because I know that was one of my questions when we saw the article, but also there's been lots of questions around mental health ever since, even before I got on board with
Yes.
mental health. So I want to thank you for acknowledging that. And I I can't wait to hear more about what that looks like on the ground. So thank you.
So I would like to throw out a comment, which I've alluded to in various forms earlier this evening, so I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter this time. This is another example of the alignment of the processes and the compliance within the district, that this is an explanation of how funding is being applied to education, that the leadership of our district is really well prepared to answer, because we organize our processes and thinking along this aligned structure of planning and implementation and compliance. And so this is another document that, although its basis is a compliance document, it is actually a clear and confidence building explanation of what our intent, what our actions are, and how we can be held accountable for the work that's being done. And so it turns out to be another excellent piece of information for the board and the public to have available, as well as those that are applying compliance for funding. The other comment I did also want to add to that, you were talking about the tremendous amount of funding that's been available. And one of the things that we all in the education community need to keep in mind, and we need to make sure that our public is continuously aware of, we are hearing a drumbeat of the state government having taken its great budget excesses and given the huge bumps in education, in funding to education. And there's more money coming to education than ever before, and on and on and on. And this is limited time, one-time funding that is coming with substantial direction and focus and new need and new compliance associated with it. Yes, we're being given substantial, meaningful new funding to accomplish meaningful, important things, but they are framed in a one-time manner. The fundamental structural issues of funding that the education community has always faced have not gone away, have not been resolved, have not been solved by a magic spigot of money. But we have massive new needs that we're meeting on a one-time basis and doing a great job of it. So we do want to keep the picture very clear to our public and to the funding agencies out there that education funding shortfalls have not been solved by the fact that this kind of windfall is going to the COVID crisis.
I'm really glad that you said that, because this budget is appropriately entitled emergency relief. And we are in an emergency. And these are all funds that have to be used in the next 2 years. And they are being used for emergency measures. For instance, since the first day of school, we've had 76 kids who qualify as newcomers join our school district. Most of those kids are coming out of detention camps. In the detention camps, they're saying things like, who do you know? We can't release you unless we know who you know. And we've got kids in this district who had to call home and say, what was the name of so-and-so from our village who's now living in the United States? Can I get their phone number? We have 2 kids in this district who, when they arrived here this fall, the family said, we did you a favor and we got you out, but we can't take you in. We are talking about students with tremendous need. And so for instance, Sequoia has been the most hit. So when I saw these funds come out, I called Sean Priest and I said, what do you need? And he said, we need more bilingual instructional aids to help these kids. And I thought, well, I hope we can do that. And we're going to be able to do that. We're going to add some behavioral specialists, because we've got students after being home for 1.25 years in some pretty intolerable situations who are coming back with some really severe behavioral needs that we need to address. And we need to address them by not kicking them out of school, but by truly addressing those needs. And there's money in this budget for that. So yes, to your point, this is not all of a sudden, oh good, we've got money in our district now to give an SST type program to every EL kid or to improve instruction in the traditional ways that we would like to. This money is earmarked to overcome the remnants of the pandemic, and there are a lot of them.
Bonnie, I too am grateful for the explanatory notes that you shared with us. If there aren't other board comments, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve Sequoia's ESSER 3 expenditure plan.
I second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Well, that one was so good. I'd like to hear another.
Yeah. It sure is
Good
good.
evening, trustees, Superintendent Williams, and the board, and Laura and everyone. I'm a young proud principal of EPAA. Just as Bonnie mentioned, and I always am so grateful to come after Bonnie because I can be shown and modeled how to do this. We too have the ESSER funds, obviously on a much smaller scale. I think what was really critical for us is we spent so much time on the LCAP last year, and that included the ESSER 2 funds, truly digging deep with our community. If you could see all the dates and all the moments that we truly engaged everyone, it felt good to be able to say, oh, those things that we found important and valuable for our students can happen for 2 more years. So that's why you see these things like the IA for the newcomers. We also noticed that we wanted an IA for math specifically. And so that is some of the expenditures you'll see. You'll also see that just like the district, we have only those 2 categories. There is no other. And it's pretty obvious why, because absolutely we need to ensure that we have the safe in-person learning that continues, and absolutely need to be sure that we're addressing the lost instructional time. And that for us, as you see, is disproportionately where we're spending all of our money. It's $500,000 just on that alone. And as Bonnie and everyone sort of knows, it's still not enough. But in the meantime, this is going to hold us through September 30th of 2024. And that's a critical date because that allows us to expand summer school offerings and summer bridge that extra year. And so we're really hopeful that this is going to create a situation where we can recoup some of that lost, I wouldn't say learning because they learned a lot, probably more that will influence them for the rest of their lives. But that learning time, that exercising of your brain and deep critical thinking with the help of a good teacher is what we're trying to recoup. So with that, I present to you the EPAA ESSER 3 report.
I just have one question. You said you had an IA for math. That's an instructional assistant, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And how did you choose that? Like, how did you choose the math piece?
Oh my gosh. If you just look at the data, probably the most important, actually, this is something very exciting. Some of you heard this in our event that we had earlier this month, I guess. We did a deep dive into the data of our scholars, so our current 115 students in university, and how many of them were on grade level in math? 28% when they started 9th grade, which is significantly lower than their reading scores, which were 37%, which is still pretty pathetic, right? But that's exciting for us because you give us anybody and we'll take them to college, y'all, and they will stay. So that's how we got to the math, is that the math continues to be a space where our students are not algebra ready when they start at EPAA. And therefore we have invested a lot in our math program. And we're hopeful that this is going to be a big difference because I can say this, we actually did 2 things with that one role. And you met the gentleman, he was the one who broke the board with you. So the astute and the magical Jeremy Green, who is so talented in getting kids fired up about learning. So what he does is he works with the math teachers Monday through Thursday, and he gets one prep block because what he also does is he has what he calls the Resource Development Center, AKA Expanded After School. And his Friday is dedicated to that expanded after school relationship building, getting more community partners out there. So that with that one role, we've expanded the math support. And what he does is he sees which students need that extra help and has those relationships and encourages them to stay after school. And then he uses that Friday to meet with all kinds of community partners And they come and they just feed that after school program. So now when you go to EPA after school, it used to be, crickets. And there would be a lot of teachers waiting for their office hours to be filled with students. And now it's so vibrant after school. And a lot of it is because of that one human being that was an excellent hire.
Thank you so much. I know math is a big thing for students, and
Yep.
I know that through the pandemic, I think out of all the subjects, that was the hardest because it's very hard to teach math, but also if you're a diverse learner, like you have learning differences and abilities, that doing it on screen was, as a parent who was home with their kid, it was the most difficult part of the whole instruction, whether it was English, whatever, it was the most difficult one.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, we're very grateful for the impact it's had already.
Go for it. I'd be pleased to make a motion to approve EPAA's 2021 ESSA financial, ESSA 3, sorry. Expenditure plan.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a good evening.
So Shanice, you made me think of a very old song that was recorded by a Cal professor at the time by the name of Tom Lehrer in the late 1960s called New Math. It's so simple, so very simple that only a child can do it. And many parents remembered that lesson over the months of being at home tutors. All right, with that, we move down to Board of Trustees and Superintendent's comments, committee reports, agenda setting. Carrie.
We just have a couple of, I guess, committee reports or comments. I was able to put together a panel of professionals to speak at Redwood High School, and I wasn't quite sure what room I was going to. Once I got there, I realized it was the Evergreen program, and Principal Ogden talked a lot about this. It was one of her dreams. It's really an independent study program with lots of wraparound, and it is really amazing. And before the students arrived, the teacher mentioned that a couple of the students live in homeless shelters. A couple are supporting themselves and working full time. So I was just so impressed, and that was one of her dreams. So I wanted to mention that. The other thing that really hit me, I remember several years ago, I would go to Redwood and there were very few kids on campus. And when I was there last week, the campus was full and buzzing, and the classrooms were full. So I'm so proud of the work of this district. That has just been such a turnaround effort at that school, and it's amazing. I also wanted to say that I'm grateful to our superintendent. We are going to be participating in United Against Hate Week, and I'm grateful to Trustee again, who helped us gather up some videos from school leaders. So I didn't know much about United Against Hate, and now I know about it. And I had to drop off hundreds of posters to the superintendent's office. So hopefully they will be hung around our school district. And United Against Hate Week is in the middle of November, so that's coming up. Third thing I wanted to mention, for the last several years, I have been a mentor through the Woodside Academy program, and that's really been great for me as a trustee to get to know kids. They had enough mentors this year, so they sent me to Tide, and it's going to be sort of a more of a group mentoring situation. So that's going to be a good opportunity for me to learn more about one of our small schools, and I was contacted by my 3 mentees today, so I'm excited to start that. Thanks.
Chris.
So first, I would like to express publicly thanks to Susan Moore, who invited us and hosted us so wonderfully at an MA football game. Thank you. It was. What was it, a victory? It just wasn't clear to me. And And the clock was accelerated during the fourth quarter, which made a lot of sense. The other thing I have to report on, I am our board's representative to the County Committee on School District Organization. This is a group that is not ordinarily very active, because what it does is it signs off on transfers of territory between and among school districts, school district unification or deunification, some other things. But it also includes the establishment of abolishment of trustee areas and decrease in the number of trustees, and may have therefore some jurisdiction over the new boundaries we set as a result of the census. This group meets November 1st, Monday, 7 o'clock, immediately after the town hall meeting. I will join by way of Zoom, I think. I'm asked to ask you if you have anyone you want to nominate to the board of that group. I'm a representative to the committee. The committee has 11 members. There are 2 from each supervisorial district. Currently, 2 that are up, and I presume are going to run again, are Dennis McBride as an at-large and Hillary Paulson. So I turn to my colleagues. If you have anyone that you would like me to nominate, I'd be happy to do so. Well, 1, I don't know whether they're running, and 2, I think there are actually 2 slots per. There are 2 slots per district. However, it might be. I can check that out for you if you have somebody you want to
Rich,
What
nominate.
was your question?
I think that the people that were being nominated would have to run against the incumbent, or if there was an open seat.
Having worked with both of them, both on that committee and in many other activities over the years, they are both extraordinarily excellent in the position. And I certainly wouldn't find it worth the effort to go out to find somebody to try to run against either of them.
It looks like there's consensus on that. I certainly agree with that. Unfortunately, what I don't know is whether they're choosing to run again. And so if you had somebody, that nomination is due tomorrow. And the meeting's on Monday.
I don't know anybody this quick. No.
Great. It sounds like we're covered. Good. Thank you.
I just, this is committee reports, not agenda items, adding agenda items. Oh, we have a town hall next week. I'm so excited and I hope I see you all. Can I say that? Okay, I hope to see you all and the board members. I'm so excited about this town hall, y'all. I could just do a dance. And so thank you. It's November 1st. And it's going to be at Tide. I've had people email me. I've put it out on Facebook, trying to get some of the families don't typically come out to meetings. And I actually had a couple of community leaders call me. So I'm excited about that opportunity. And thank you to our student trustees who are getting information out. I'm hoping we're not too packed out so that we don't break any laws or anything about social distancing, but I'm very excited and hopefully it won't rain. So thank you. That's the only thing, other than thank you to the foundation for hosting us. And I really want to urge the other high schools to invite us, to games and plays. And I think it was just really a good opportunity.
So what time is that? I haven't received any information.
You have it?
6 o'clock? No.
6 to 7.
6 to 7? You didn't get it?
At Tide.
Carrie, I will send it to you, or Anna, can you resend to the board? Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to adding agenda items. I think one thing is that we did not get to one of our agenda items in closed session, or I guess 2 of them in depth due to an illness. So we will need to reschedule the review of negotiations. And I think we'll want to leave that in the superintendent's hands to poll board members and get that figured out. I would as a starting point, I would suggest that next Wednesday, the 3rd, is not a board meeting, and often we have Wednesday late afternoons and evenings relatively available for things. So that might be at least one good place to begin checking availability. But just one recommendation of the process.
So we're recommending, are we saying that, are we available next Wednesday? Are you just recommending?
I'm asking the superintendent to
Oh, okay.
coordinate that, and
We will send out a survey to see the availability, because we also want to check the availability of the presenters as well.
Yeah. aside from that, I've always somewhat considered myself to be invited to all the football games and performing arts, events. So I'm looking to jump into a lot of them. There's a few late season football games of great note coming up, and looking forward to those as well. All right, if we're all caught up, then I would welcome a motion of adjournment.
We didn't do agenda items.
I think one of the agenda items got pulled, and I wonder if that's, so we may be
Right,
done.
right,
What?
no, but that is correct. We were not completed. We were not completed with the agenda item from the special
I'm confused.
the special meeting on continuing on superintendent evaluation. So we should return to closed session on that.
Do we do future agenda items?
I started. Do you have another?
Oh, okay. I thought we were just doing committee announcements. Can I ask about a couple of agenda items that you talked about? One is last week we talked about the appreciation and the burnout of staff and students and how to really support that. I wasn't clear when that was going to be on the agenda, so I just wanted to revisit that, not to discuss it, but just like, when are we going to talk about that? President Sarver had talked about really thinking about our community and still being in a pandemic and really hearing about some of the needs. Thinking how can we be more creative around people's wellness and things of that sort. So I don't know what the decision, when that would be on the agenda. The other one is there is and I don't know where to put this. So Dr. Williams, you tell me there was a safety notice, and I don't know if EPA have received it, about offenders in our community, particularly sexual assault. And just wanted to make sure. I know my daughter sent me some stuff and saying keep the kids safe and all that good stuff. So I'm just wondering if our district and our local high school in that area know about that.
Yes, we do. And we've been in communication, and we talked about procedures for notification.
Okay, thank you. And then the very last thing is that, can we do some type of charter program presentation? I haven't heard from KIP. I'm thinking about reaching out to them to see if I can just come see their school so I can just learn more about what they're doing. But I just think it's important for us to kind of, I mean, I haven't gone out to Summit or Everest. I have a different relationship with KIP, just being from East Palo Alto, but I'd like to learn more. That's all for me.
So to follow up on that last one, we have had annual reports from the charter schools that are brought to us. But that has been not very actively pursued during the pandemic. So it would be, I think it would be consistent with our past practice to at least get that back on track. I know other board members have been here through those. Yeah. So
I would, on that same note, I would be interested if other board members think this would be useful. I would like to hear from Oxford Day as well, because they're in our community and I think people ask us about it. That charter was denied by our district, I think 3-2 vote or 4-1 vote. And it's now run by the County Office of Education. So it is serving kids in our community. So I'd like to get an update on that as well.
Question. I know that there was a discussion to your point about the wellness and burnout of staff. And that there was discussion from President Sarver regarding the shutdown, mandatory shutdown for December, the winter break. So I don't know if we want to revisit that.
So I think, yeah, that was, that was the comment that kind of started the conversation, is that perhaps a district resolution on a full shutdown over winter break as a recognition of the stresses everybody is under and the need to recharge. But I think that sparked conversation from the board of a more general perspective that we do want to be more active and detailed in thinking of staff and student well-being, mental health, and large-scale actions that can come from this body and policy direction across the district. And I believe where we ended up with was the superintendent on behalf of staff was going to go away to work on that and come back with recommendations for consideration and for more work.
And in that same spirit, if I may, in the spirit of wellness, if we may consider moving that agenda item to the next meeting from the closed session with the superintendent evaluation.
Okay.
Fine by me.
All right with the board. It was a request to continue the superintendent evaluation discussion from today to our next closed session, rather than returning to closed session currently. Yeah.
She basically wants us to end the session. Is that okay? And do it next time?
Yeah.
Okay. In the spirit of wellness, we tired? And it's 9:30?
I think we're all tired.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we vote? What are we doing?
We're looking in.
I'll
that
make a
case-
motion to adjourn.
I'll
Excellent.
second Chris's motion.
All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.